Chapter 1497. Just like Jiang Tian's chaotic source cauldron, which was his most powerful weapon apart from the absolute heaven sword, it represented the power of nature and the world. Even a half-step soul formation cultivator wouldn't dare to face it casually. It was the same logic as now. No cultivator was willing to become enemies with the owner of a world that was using one's weakness to attack another's strength. One had to know that the power of heaven and earth was too strong. Be it a grotto heaven or a small world, even if the grotto heaven was only 100 miles in radius, it was still extremely terrifying. The flaming saber was 100,000 feet long and extremely blazing. The entire sky was forcefully torn apart. The void trembled and the earth quaked. A glacier that was 10,000 feet high rapidly melted 100 miles away. The ice and snow that had not melted for 1,000 years evaporated into clouds and mist. Countless living beings were forcefully cooked and burned into ashes. The vast northern sea realm was shaking and trembling. It seemed as if it could not withstand the pressure and would crack open in the next moment. You don't know what's good for you. You're courting death by trying to compete with my flames. Jiang Tian sneered with a mocking expression. In the face of this attack that was comparable to a soul formation grand cultivator, Jiang Tian didn't advance or retreat. Instead, he took a step forward and extended his jade-white fingers like a girl's slender fingers. Clang. At this moment, a pair of flaming wings that were 1,000 feet long suddenly unfolded on one of Jiang Tian's shoulders. It was the wings of the vermilion bird. It was completely formed by the vermilion bird true fire laws. Every feather was like a red heavenly saber that emitted thousands of rays of light and thousands of auspicious colors. It was extremely dazzling and extremely powerful as it slashed through. Boom. In fact, Jiang Tian's wings of the vermilion bird weren't as shocking as Elder Wu's flaming saber, but its lethality was too terrifying. It was completely the power of laws. When the saber slashed, the true fire laws rumbled and burned the void within 100 miles. The moment Elder Wu's flaming saber came into contact with the vermilion bird true fire laws, it instantly collapsed as if it was made of hot oil and couldn't withstand a single blow at all. How is this possible? Elder Wu cried out in shock. His face instantly turned as white as a sheet of paper. Cold sweat flowed down his back as he was extremely shocked. He had never expected that his attack, which had gathered the power of the heavenly abode and earthly fire and was aimed at the divinity transformation stage cultivator, would not be able to resist Jiang Tian's casual wave of his fingers. He wanted to retreat, but he immediately discovered that he couldn't move his body in the slightest. He couldn't help but be scared out of his wits. He was actually locked in place by Jiang Tian's forbidden zone. Kong Teichu, let go of me. Even though Jiang Tian was using all kinds of methods, his roaring nascent soul was burning. He used all kinds of secret arts and dozens of Dharma artifacts that could increase his speed, break restrictions, and escape spells exploded at the same time, and the other 6 magnates also attacked together, trying to break Jiang Tian's forbidden realm. They still didn't succeed. In the blink of an eye, Jiang Tian's vermilion bird primordial fire had already reached him. With a loud boom, Elder Wu was like a giant firework, blooming in the air. Spiritual essence, blood fog and Dharma powers rolled out in all directions. The moment Elder Wu died, the Xianming grotto trembled. Heavy rain poured down like the tears of the heavens. Angry thunderclaps seemed to be roaring. The wind howled like a whimper. Fire spewed out like the howling of ghosts. The nascent soul was formed by the laws of heaven and earth. Especially when Elder Wu had been cultivating in seclusion here for 100 years, he had already merged his own laws with the Xianming grotto heaven. When he died, the heaven and earth resonated as if the son of this grotto heaven had died. How is this possible? At this moment, tens of thousands of miles away, the countless practitioners around the ruins of Winterfell were dumbfounded. Their faces were filled with disbelief. Elder Wu borrowed the power of the earthly fire of the entire grotto heaven. Even Marulong, Zhou Zian, and the other magnates of the Xianming grotto heaven were shocked. They couldn't believe it. This is too scary. Fairy Qingshi could no longer maintain her elegance and dignity. She was so shocked that she almost fell from the sky. Then she turned into a stream of light and retreated into the paradise. They certainly knew that Jiang Tian was powerful. After all, Jiang Tian had defeated more than 20 nascent soul cultivators from different worlds on the 18 islands, slaughtering the 3 golden crows and 26 half-soul formation cultivators above the ancient demon abyss. His achievements were enough to shock the world and even be recorded in history. However, they did not expect Jiang Tian to be so strong. Elder Wu had already completely controlled the power of the earthly fire in that grotto heaven. Normal nascent soul cultivators would be no match for him, and half-soul formation cultivators might not even be able to fight against him. And yet, he still couldn't withstand Jiang Tian's casual wave. What a fool! What do you know about cultivation? Jiang Tian's face was calm and relaxed. With his hands behind his back, he said leisurely, "You must know that if one obeys, one becomes immortal. If one defies, one becomes an immortal. Cultivation is going against heaven and earth, seizing the fortune of heaven and earth to refine oneself. You're immersed in controlling the power of heaven and earth, but you don't know that you'll be devoured and assimilated by the will of heaven and earth sooner or later. Cultivators like us should fight against heaven and earth and fight for our own lives. You, on the other hand, pursue the so-called natural Tao, which is inferior. Moreover, you're only controlling a grotto heaven with a radius of 100 miles. I think the cultivation arts of your ruins of immortality are just SOSO. You should be swept into the dust of history." Barbaric! Barbaric! If the Tao is against nature, what's the law? Ma Rulong shouted, "You lack respect for heaven and earth, so you'll never reach the peak of the nascent soul cultivator, soul formation cultivator, or even immortal ascension. It's fine if you're the law of yourself or the world. In short, there's no good law of nature." Jiang Tian laughed mockingly and said, "That's right. You can support me. You won't understand my ability and ambition. Even the Ruins Emperor might not understand it. As long as I'm willing, I can even reach the soul formation, void reversion, and Tao integration realm with a snap of my fingers, let alone the nascent soul realm." Jiang Tian's expression was neither sad nor happy, as though he was hanging high in the sky. His figure was peerless, and he looked a little lonely. However, that's meaningless. Haste makes waste. The further you go on the path of cultivation, the more you'll know that building a solid foundation is more important than anything else. Arrogant! Kill him! Ma Rulong roared. "Do you think that you can be proud just because you're one with a grotto heaven? Fine. I'll show you what true strength is today." Jiang Tian roared as the vast gung metal laws surged like a river. His aura surged into the heavens and stirred the firmaments. With a punch, the world collapsed. Gung metal divine fist. Clang. That punch was like an asteroid hitting the ground or 100,000-foot mountain soaring through the sky. The surging gung metal energy waves swept in all directions like a vast ocean. Boom. At that moment, the barrier formed by countless nethergale, snowstorm, and lightning trembled violently. The snowstorm dragons that stretched across the sky like gigantic dragons were blasted apart. The next moment, his punch tore a huge hole in the barrier. Inside, winds howled angrily as black gases were thick. It resembled the netherworld. The barrier was 5 kilometers long. Through the hole that spanned 1,000 feet, one could see the fragrance of flowers, clear springs, and tranquil lakes. A divine garden sat by the lakeside. It was the Xianming Grotto Heaven. Jiang Tian's punch had shattered the Xianming Grotto Heaven's barrier. Bush. Before Marulong, Zhou Zian, Elder Ai, Fairy Qingshi, and the other powerhouses could attack, they were sent flying more than 5 kilometers away like withered leaves in the wind. What? Elder Ai, who had the lowest cultivation level, felt a sweetness in his throat as he spat out a mouthful of blood. He wore a bitter expression as fear filled his eyes. He was so frightened that his legs were trembling. "How dare you! This is the temporary residence that Prince Qiuming built for the Ruins Emperor. How dare you destroy it?" Ma Rulong and the other powerhouses' expressions changed drastically. They looked up at Jiang Tian in shock and anger. "I, Kong Teichu, have been unrivaled and have been bold for 10,000 years. Even if I want to destroy the ruins Emperor's altar, what can you do? Jiang Tian laughed loudly without any restraint. He was indescribably domineering and evil. He was like a fighter jet that crashed into the Xianming Grotto Heaven. He's too powerful. That's a Grotto Heaven barrier. Even a soul formation cultivator might not be able to destroy it. However, Kong Teichu tore it apart with a single punch. Around the Xianming Grotto Heaven, countless cultivators who were watching the battle under the huge screen of Winterfell's ruins exclaimed in admiration. They were horrified as though they had seen a demon. Chapter 1498. Ichem, the Xianming Grotto Heaven is powerful. It's not that simple. If Kong Teichu can destroy it with a single punch, would it still be called a Grotto Heaven? There were still some stubborn people who didn't think highly of Jiang Tian. They didn't dare to say it out loud, but they talked sarcastically with their immortal will, as if Jiang Tian was an ant trying to shake a tree or a mantis. As expected, "Stop him!" As Marulong shouted, many of the overlords reacted and attacked Jiang Tian with their secret arts, trying to kill him outside the Grotto Heaven. Kong Teichu, don't be arrogant. Let me see what you're capable of. A tall and bulky old man in iron armor with horns on his head flew up and threw a punch at Jiang Tian from afar. I don't know where that old man came from. I heard that he was a famous rogue cultivator in the ruins of deities. He went to the Xianming Grotto Heaven for a few hundred years and became one with the wind and thunder there. In the end, everyone called him Master Thunder Wind. The living fossils of the Northern Sea realm under the enormous golden screen let out cries of alarm, as if they had seen a ghost. Their faces were filled with fear. It's him! I heard that he once created a thunder art and turned all the thunder within a 100-mile radius into powder. Although he's only a nascent soul cultivator, he can unleash the power of a soul formation cultivator in the Grotto Heaven. Someone's face turned as pale as a sheet of paper after hearing that. Everyone looked up. There was no sound within a 100-mile radius around the ruins of Winterfell. There was only the sound of wind blowing and snow falling. They saw it. As Master Thunder Wind threw a punch, the world lost its color and the clouds changed. His eyes were cold, as if he were a king who ruled the world and looked down at the world with a domineering aura. Traces of the laws appeared high up in the sky of the Xianming Grotto Heaven. Giant clouds with a radius of 10 miles rolled and rolled. Rain poured down in that space, as if the sea was about to collapse. Wind and thunder rumbled. Green true thunders that were as thick as buckets and looked like sky-devouring pythons condensed and poured into his fist. Then, they rushed out of the barrier and struck towards Jiang Tian. Giant thunderbolts exploded in the sky. The thunderbolts were azure and seemed to be formed by many runes. If a nascent soul heavenly lord was there, he would have recognized that they weren't normal thunderbolts, but the manifestation of Dharma laws. Any nascent soul cultivator would have to face the true thunderbolts of the Dharma laws during the tribulation. They were extremely dangerous and they were extremely powerful. At the same time, the true thunderbolts manifested by the Dharma laws were falling outside the seal. And the scale was moving towards an infinitely large direction. At first, they were only as thick as buckets, like serpents and thunder dragons. But soon huge thunderclouds filled the sky, and thunder mountains that were thousands of meters tall came crashing down. The thunder mountains were high, surrounded by countless storms and airflows. They were like giant pillars that supported the sky and the earth, crossing the two worlds. In the end, the vast and surging lightning even interweaved into an ocean of lightning that covered an area of 5 kilometers. It was extremely blazing and violent, and it enveloped the sky and was sufficient to shake the world. Haha, I told you that using the power of the Grotto Heaven is just a small trick. Although Jiang Tian's figure was blocked by the sea of thunder, he didn't panic. His eyes were calm, and there was no fear on his face. The 10-meter-long divine disk behind him spun in a dazzling manner. The lightning-slaughter divine body erupted, the true seal rumbled, and the laws of nature spread out. As he threw a punch, there were suddenly bolts of lightning, like a river in heaven. The earth-shattering thunder divine body jumped out. It was powerful and shocking. He's going to fight thunder with thunder. Oh God. He can also control the Dharma laws of thunder. What a monster! How many Dharma laws has he mastered? Everyone exclaimed as their hearts raced and they held their breaths. That was a battle between two peerless overlords, an extremely rare top battle. It hadn't happened in the North Sea since the Battle of the Age of Tao Damage. Boom! The huge, shining thunder mantis leaped out and roared towards the sky. Like a storm, it rushed into the sea of thunder and mountains and attacked with equal harshness. The thunder divine body slashed and tore a few thunder dragons and serpents as if they were pieces of paper. Many Dharma runes of thunder divine body appeared between its fingers and claws. Each of them was formed by lightning and was imprinted under the sky, which made people gasp. That was an unprecedented battle. No matter how powerful Jiang Tian was, only a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator with the power of a soul formation grand cultivator could perform such a terrifying attack. From this, it could be seen that regardless of whether it was Jiang Tian or Master Feng Lazy, their comprehension of the laws had already reached the peak of perfection, to the point that it was shocking. Clang! Boom! Lei Meng flew across the sky, his eyes filled with terrifying lightning. He was extremely ferocious and violent as he slammed into the thunder mountains one after another. A great collapse occurred between heaven and earth as the strangely shaped lightning energy tore through the sky, pierced through the earth, and pushed away the 1,000-meter-tall mountain. The earth was in chaos as rubble flew into the sky, rolling up piles of snow. In the end, Lei Meng roared and opened his mouth, which was as big as a mountain. Then, like a whale sucking in water, he swallowed the vast sea of lightning with a radius of 10 miles. No! Thunder Breeze shouted and tried to stop it with fear in his eyes, but it was too late. His energy fell from the peak stage nascent soul level to the golden core level in a blink. Half of his energy was gone in a blink. In the end, he spurted out blood and fell to the ground. His energy fluctuated like a toad. No one knew if it was because he was angry or because he had suffered a backlash. His thunder laws had merged with the grotto heaven and were originally boundless and indestructible. However, they were swallowed by Jiang Tian's thunder laws. Dharma laws were an important part of a nascent soul cultivator. His power fell rapidly after being swallowed. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. One of the 7 giants, the Lightning Wind Master, had already fallen to his limits, losing the qualifications and ability to fight against Jiang Tian. Besides, Thunder Breeze was one of the more powerful ones among the 7 magnates, much more powerful than Elder Wu. He could at least be ranked in the top 4. Only half an hour had passed since the start of the battle. One of the 7 magnates was dead and the other one was injured. Jiang Tian could be said to be invincible. At this moment, Jiang Tian put away the thunder centipede that seemed to have doubled in size. The clouds in the sky disappeared, and the thunder dispersed. Only he was left standing with his hands behind his back. He was like a peerless god of war that had descended, and no one could stop him. That scene shocked everyone. In their minds, Thunder Breeze controlled the power of wind and thunder in the grotto heaven. He could summon wind and clouds in 100 miles and create a vast sea of thunder. He wouldn't even be afraid of facing a soul formation cultivator. He was really like a superior god. And yet, he couldn't resist Jiang Tian's attack. That was unbelievable and they felt their worldview had collapsed. That's terrifying. That's terrifying. Many of the spectators had ashen faces. Although Kang Teichu was born in the desolate solar system, no one cares about where a hero comes from. With his talent and strength, he might really be able to fight with the Emperor of the Ruins. Cultivators like us have to be strong after all. Bloodlines are nothing. If we're talking about bloodlines, let's not fight. Let's just compare our ancestral tablets. This guy is domineering, talented, and powerful. He's worth following. Many people thought to themselves. At the beginning, they knelt and submitted because they were forced by Jiang Tian's might and ruthless methods, and the fear in their hearts was greater than admiration. But now, admiration had gained the upper hand, and they even had the desire to follow him. Kang Teichu is so powerful. Fairy Qingshi turned pale and her heart trembled. She couldn't believe it. She had traveled to many worlds in the ruins of immortality and visited thousands of sections. She even held a position in the academy and had the opportunity to drink wine with many people. She had even discussed Tao with the headmaster and the sword god. She had seen all kinds of geniuses. And yet, she was truly shocked by Jiang Tian at that moment. Thunder Breeze had summoned the wind and thunder in the grotto heaven and borrowed the laws of heaven and earth, but he still couldn't defeat Jiang Tian. "Let's attack together." Ma Rulong's face was as cold as iron and his eyes were ruthless. He shouted with a thunderous voice. Boom, boom. The entire Xianming grotto heaven was shaking and letting out loud noises, as if it were about to collapse. Terrifying energy waves were triggered to the limit by Ma Rulong and the other overlords. Dharma laws were boiling like raging waves, emerging from the cracks of the array and blooming like a mushroom cloud. Chapter 1499. Law of Killing, Sword of Destruction. Zhou Zian's sword-like eyebrows rose as he shouted. His fingers formed a series of hand seals, and his sleeves fluttered without wind. In the end, his body trembled slightly, and as if he was lifting a mountain, he pointed at Jiang Tian. He comprehended a Tao law of this world, one that represented slaughter. It was exceptionally sharp, capable of wiping out all life. It instantly transformed into swords of annihilation. They were densely packed, numbering in the tens of thousands. Cold light flickered about as they covered the sky. This barrier had become one with them. They didn't need to activate it to form a barrier and defense. Their attacks weren't restricted at all. They could walk out of the barrier and their attacks would instantly break through the barrier. As he pointed in the air, countless dermic swords rushed out of the barrier. The sword aura was boundless and murderous, like a snow waterfall. Every sword of the law of killing could kill a golden core perfected lord easily. The slaughter Tao insight was piercingly cold and murderous, causing the clouds in the surroundings to move while sword chi and sword moves changed in a myriad of ways. Strands of killing light shot out and shattered space, and it seemed as if it intended to slice the entire heavens and the earth into countless pieces while the laws interweaved in a complicated manner. Law of merit, unparalleled merit. Immediately afterward, a white-robed, benevolent-looking, highly respected, and incomparably sacred giant let out a soft shout and attacked. Countless golden clouds rushed out of the barrier and suppressed Jiang Tian. The clouds were filled with a sacred aura. Every cloud gathered a law of merit, which represented the power of merit of the Xianming grotto heaven in this world to get rid of evil, slay demons, and protect the people. The white-robed Taoist Huang Qi's situation was very special. He entered the Tao through medicine and cultivated an unparalleled divine power. A few thousand years ago, he'd frequently descended to the northern ocean realm to save the dying and heal the wounded. He'd practiced medicine to help the world, and he'd traveled thousands of kilometers to heal the poor. In this world, there were countless good men and women who worshipped and supported him, and they worshipped him as a god. After he entered the Xianming grotto heaven, he poured the merit into this world. At this moment, he was suppressing people with his past achievements. Law of withering, life withering. An old man dressed like a Taoist. He had a wrinkled skin and a crane head. His clothes were old, and his eyes were muddy and lifeless. He emitted an aura of age and decay. He coughed, and his body trembled as he walked out and waved his sleeve. Suddenly, a deathly aura burst out from the grotto heaven, turning into a long black rainbow. It was filled with an aura of decay as it flew towards Jiang Tian. Between heaven and earth, yin and yang complemented each other, and life and death were intertwined. Even the Blessed Enclave was no exception. And the Xianming grotto heaven naturally needed to be nurtured into a land of exuberant vitality. If not, how could it become the ruins' emperor's residence? Therefore, they spent hundreds of years and used their great magic power to completely extract the baleful qi and death qi within 100 miles and condensed it in one place. It was this old Taoist named Zhu Mingzi who was in charge of it. And now, the deathly aura had transformed into nomological attacks, turning into long black qi rainbows. These black rainbows that contain the law of withering and death qi might seem inconspicuous, but they are in fact extremely dangerous. They are in no way inferior to the laws of merit and slaughter. Just one of them can shave off flesh and blood and corrode one's soul. Even a golden core perfected lord will die instantly if they come into contact with it. It can even cause a nascent soul heavenly lord's body to wither, their blood to decay, their essence chi to turn into pus, and their souls to be destroyed. Beneath the golden screen, there were even living fossils from the northern ocean pointing out in horror. With every word he said, everyone's expression turned more horrified. By the time he was done, everyone finally understood how terrifying the Xianming Grotto Heaven was and what Jiang Tian was up against. It's too terrifying. The three laws have fused with the Xianming Grotto Heaven. At that moment, countless people cried out tragically. How could such a peerless killing aura be resisted by mere mortals? As expected of the ruins emperor's residence. It's truly a place set up by an expert under Prince Qiuming's orders. It's too terrifying. Some people were trembling in fear, their faces as pale as a sheet. No matter how powerful a nascent soul heavenly lord was, he could only touch the laws of heaven and earth and borrow their power. However, he couldn't fuse with the laws of heaven and earth. Even though the Grotto Heaven was only 100 miles wide, it was extremely terrifying. At this moment, Long Xingnan and Yao Yufei's faces turned pale. Their beautiful eyes were wide open as they stared fixedly at the golden screen. Clearly, they were worried for Jiang Tian. Even Wu Shujian put down the thunderflame wine and stared uneasily at Jiang Tian, who was on the giant screen, with a grim expression, waiting to see how he would deal with the situation. He knew. Even though Zhou Zian, Huang Qi and Zhu Ming were only nascent soul heavenly lords, their attacks had borrowed the power of the Grotto Heaven. They were too powerful and were comparable to an attack from a soul formation cultivator. They could at least fight with Shen Chang when he was at his peak. Even the thousands of disciples in the Grotto Heaven, who were all golden core cultivators, attacked at the same time and attacked Jiang Tian. It could be said that when they saw this peerless killing situation among the many spectators, other than Ghost Wolf who still maintained his confidence in Jiang Tian, not many people thought that Jiang Tian could win. Meanwhile, Jiang Tian raised his eyes and looked at the waterfall-like sword aura, the sun-piercing black rainbows, the golden clouds, the mighty nether wind, the surging cold waves, and the snowstorm that was like a giant dragon flying across the sky. He said with a sneer, "I've said it again and again. You can't suppress me with the power of heaven and earth. Even if heaven and earth has the wisdom of the Grand Tao, it won't work either." Jiang Tian raised his sword-like eyebrows. His eyes flashed with a ruthless and cold light. His black hair fluttered like a waterfall, and his fighting spirit rose like a huge wave. He said, "Unless a soul formation grand cultivator comes and fights with me. Otherwise, you won't be able to defeat me even if you have thousands of divine powers and endless cultivation arts. I've given you a chance, but you're still stubborn. You've exhausted my patience. Fine, I'll send you to hell." At this moment, all the cultivators in the Baiming Sea were looking at Jiang Tian, including Marulong and Fairy Qingshi in the Grotto Heaven. They wanted to see how Jiang Tian would destroy the three Dharma laws. Swish. Jiang Tian reached out his jade-white right hand that looked like it was carved out of immortal jade and was longer than a young girl's. He tapped the air. There wasn't a trace of energy in that finger. It was light and gentle, like a girl touching her lover's forehead. There wasn't the slightest fluctuation in heaven and earth, not even a wisp of abnormal phenomena. The hell wind was still howling, the cold waves were still surging, and the snowstorm was still whistling. The Xianming Grotto Heaven behind the barrier became more and more ethereal. None of this had changed at all. That's it? Everyone was confused. Everything in front of them was different from what they had expected. Had Kong Teichu used up all his energy and couldn't fight back at all? He's out of tricks. 3 types of vast laws, who could resist and restrain them? Kong Teichu has mastered more than one Dharma law, but he might not be able to deal with them. Marulong observed for a while and suddenly sneered. "If you can't do it, then you'll have to face our merciless slaughter. I hope he doesn't kill himself. He's extremely talented. If Prince Qiufan can recruit him, he'll achieve great things." At this moment, even Fairy Qingshi heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. Her tense body slowly relaxed as she thought the crisis was over. I thought it was some peerless divine power. It's just a bluff. It's not working. Jiang Taichu is not working. Elder AI, who was short and had the lowest level of cultivation, even laughed and rolled on the stairs. At this moment, even Long Xingnan and Fairy Yao Yu looked doubtful. Could it be that Senior Taichu's divine power was suppressed by the 3 Dharma laws? Was that why it didn't cause any abnormal phenomena? While everyone was laughing and doubting, Ma Rulong's pupils suddenly shrank to the size of a needle and he exclaimed, "What's that?" "Finger of unity." At this moment, Jiang Tian retracted his finger, covered his hands in his sleeves, and lightly spat out 4 words. When the crowd heard those words, they were still confused when they saw a shocking scene. Chapter 1500. Bang! He saw an incomparably deep black vortex suddenly appear amidst the endless waterfall-like sword light, the sun-piercing black rainbows, the golden clouds, the mighty nether wind, the surging cold waves, and the snowstorm that was like a giant pillar that held up the sky and a snow dragon that soared through the sky. The vortex was so deep that it was like the most terrifying black hole in the depths of the universe. It was as if one's divine soul and body would be swallowed just by looking at it. Even the fastest immortal light would fall into it and be unable to extricate itself. Subsequently, countless swords of the laws of slaughter collapsed in unison, and they transformed into chaotic pieces that collapsed into shapeless pieces that fluttered about like butterflies that covered the sky. After that, they transformed into chaotic talisman markings that surged towards the black hole like strands of muddy heavenly rivers that flowed in reverse. At practically the exact same moment, the expanse of golden virtue clouds that were suffused with a divine and eternal aura and were heavier than a myriad of mountains emanated clear cracking sounds as they were torn into pieces like pieces of scrap paper, and then they fell into the deep vortex. In the end, even the black rainbows that represented the laws of death, loneliness, and decay that pierced through the world collapsed and surged toward the black vortex. At that moment, the world was turned upside down, the sun and the moon collapsed, and the world was in chaos. The 3 laws of slaughter, the dark wind, and the cold waves were all torn into pieces by the vortex of the Taoya's return to the origin. Even a 1,000-meter wide hole was forcefully torn open in the barrier. The swallowing power of the Taoya's return to the origin was too terrifying. It seemed to be able to swallow the world and the universe as if it were going to swallow everything. The Xinming Grotto heaven kept shaking as if it was about to collapse. The laws contained within the connection between heaven and man let out sorrowful cries with fear and anger. The divine garden that was surrounded by countless spiritual qi and essence qi was like rain. Spirit birds were flying in the sky, and auspicious beasts were running. Although it immediately released countless runes and runes, it was useless. The exquisite pavilions were torn into pieces, and the magnificent palaces were uprooted from the ground and flew toward the vortex. They were almost razed to the ground in an instant. Only the lake and river that filled the mysterious underworld cold spring were not sucked away. The ancient lotuses on the 12 lotus platforms were like sea-stabilizing needles that didn't move at all. The profound nether grotto heaven was protected by a barrier and array formation. It was surrounded by nomological laws, so the situation was slightly better. What was even more terrifying was the changes within a 50-kilometer radius of the profound nether grotto heaven. The boundless lofty glaciers were over 3 kilometers tall, and they seemed to have been swept by an invisible sword, causing them to break apart at the roots and soar into the sky. On the ground, it was as if it had been turned over by an ancient god with a huge plow. Huge cracks of dozens of miles and hundreds of miles were carved out, like the Great Rift Valley of East Africa. At that moment, the entire northern sea was deathly silent. Not a single sound could be heard in an area of hundreds of thousands of kilometers. Countless cultivators and mortals were speechless. Countless cultivators watched this scene with their mouths agape. They were as silent as cicadas in winter. They felt as if their worldview had been turned upside down and their world had completely collapsed. How is this possible? Inside the grotto heaven, Zhou Zian, Taoist Huang Qi, and Zhu Mingzi exclaimed in shock. Their eyeballs almost popped out of their sockets as if they had just seen a primordial demon. After a while, Marulong staggered and almost fell down from the high ground. Fairy Qingshur's eyes were wide open, filled with fear and disbelief. The three nomological laws were extremely powerful and each had their own strengths. They were connected to the grotto heaven and their power was endless. Moreover, they had different attributes and were extremely difficult to suppress. And yet, they couldn't resist Jiang Tian's finger attack. That finger attack had even torn the barrier of the profound nether grotto heaven. It wreaked havoc inside the grotto heaven and destroyed many arrays. It was a complete mess. Evil. Evil. Terrifying. The grotto heaven is about to collapse. I surrender. I don't want to fight anymore. Elder AI screamed in fear. Tears and snot were running down his face. He ran around like a headless fly, trying to escape from the terrifying devouring power. Not only were the giants of the profound nether grotto heaven unable to believe it. Many disciples in the grotto heaven and countless cultivators in the North Sea realm who were watching the battle, especially the leaders of the major sects, couldn't believe it. They didn't want to believe it either. Even the profound nether grotto heaven had been torn apart by Jiang Tian's finger attack. The protective arrays of the sects, families, and cities in the North Sea realm were even more vulnerable. If Jiang Tian wanted to destroy their sects and dojos, he only needed to stretch out a finger and everything would be destroyed. It was as easy as crushing an ant. That's the perplexing finger. It's comparable to the Great Tao. Kong Teichu is just a golden core cultivator. How can he use it? Marulong screamed in the grotto heaven. His voice was so penetrating that even Jiang Tian, who was 100 miles away, could hear it clearly. The perplexing finger. The cultivators in the North Sea realm also heard it through the giant golden screens. They were all confused. Apparently, they had never heard of it before. The so-called perplexing finger refers to a peak-stage nascent soul cultivator or even a half-soul formation cultivator. They have comprehended and touched countless Dharma laws. They have already melted the high-level Dharma laws into their bodies and have peeked into the great Tao of heaven and earth. It's infinitely close to being used by a real soul formation cultivator. By then, they have already comprehended the great Tao and resonated with the great Tao of heaven and earth, making an attack that follows the great Tao. Seeing the confused looks on everyone's faces, Ghost Wolf proudly explained. This attack follows the great Tao and reaches the soul formation level. Although it's not as powerful as an attack from a grand cultivator, it's still extremely terrifying. It's not something a nascent soul cultivator can resist. That's why it's also called the perplexing attack. The profound netherworld is a small grotto heaven that fell from the depths of the universe. It's protected and strengthened by countless natural Dharma laws. Those Dharma laws aren't created by cultivators. Only soul formation overlords can destroy them. Senior Tai Chu broke it with a finger. What else could it be if not the perplexing finger? After hearing what Ghost Wolf said, everyone was stunned and remained silent for a long time. Countless golden core perfected cultivators looked pale and didn't want to believe it. They were all golden core cultivators or nascent soul cultivators, but why was there such a huge difference? If they went to the profound nether grotto heaven, they wouldn't even be able to resist the most common cold wind, let alone break the enchantment and break the inside of the grotto heaven. He's only a golden core cultivator, but he can already see the great Tao of the soul formation level. If he becomes a nascent soul cultivator one day, won't killing soul formation cultivators be as easy as killing chickens and dogs? Fairy Qingshur mumbled to herself in a daze. Her beautiful face, which had always been as calm as water, was now filled with fear and shock. Cold sweat covered her forehead. Even though Jiang Tian could unleash many Dharma laws and even perform forbidden regions, he was only a golden core cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator, which couldn't escape the eyes of Fairy Qingshur and the others. A golden core perfected cultivator was able to see the truth of the soul formation level and perform an attack at the Grand Tao level. That was too terrifying, even more terrifying than killing a half-soul formation cultivator. After all, the battlefield was constantly changing. Many cultivators relied on their rich battle experience, ingenious killing techniques, or ambushes to kill people at a higher level. And Jiang Tian was showing his real strength at the moment. Chapter 1501. Although Ma Rulong was unwilling to believe it, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. He wanted to retreat as he shouted, "Fellow Taoists, retreat quickly and save your own lives. We can't stop him." At that moment, a huge golden screen appeared 10,000 feet above the Winterfell ruins. Ghost Wolf had set up a surveillance Dharma artifact inside the Xianming Grotto Heaven. It was now open. "Everyone, it's time for the pinnacle duel. I dare say that in less than 5 minutes, Kong Teichu will destroy the Xianming Grotto Heaven. No one can stop him." Ghost Wolf cackled strangely as he played with the Void Piercer. His words made everyone in the Dark North shudder. But if the Ruins Emperor blames us, in the Grotto Heaven, Zhou Zian was still hesitating when he heard Ma Rulong's transmission. Jiang Tian had already retracted the Taoyes regression law and transformed into a stream of light as he slammed into the Grotto Heaven's barrier. The 30-foot divine disk behind him was dazzling as it spun rapidly. Like a gear, it tore through the Grotto Heaven's barrier that had yet to completely close. Jiang Tian was like an ancient divine arrow that tore through the heavens as he shot into the Xianming Grotto Heaven. In fact, be it Ma Rulong or Ghost Wolf, their guesses about the peri-celestial strike were wrong. Jiang Tian was only a golden core after all. He had yet to reach the nascent soul stage. Condensing a true seal and striking out nomological laws was already the limit. He was extremely lucky and had obtained many treasures to successfully form his nascent soul. However, he was still only a peak-stage golden core. He could not cross the nascent soul and soul formation realms to deliver a soul formation strike. However, although Ma Rulong and Ghost Wolf's guesses were not accurate, they were not far off. Jiang Tian was limited by his cultivation realm and could not deliver a soul formation strike. However, his understanding of nomological laws and great Tao far exceeded that of ordinary people. His Taoyes regression law was the supreme divine-level nomological law in the universe. It far surpassed the nomological laws of ordinary peak-stage nascent soul or half-step soul formation cultivators. Seeing Jiang Tian step through the air, Zhou Zian was shocked. More than half of his Grotto Heaven's killing nomological laws had been devoured by Jiang Tian. Naturally, his combat strength had dropped. How could he fight him? "Kong Teichu, stop here. I will plead for mercy on your behalf in front of Prince Qiuming. He will forgive you for barging into the Ruins Emperor's residence and offending the heavens." As he fled in a sorry state, he flew towards a secret teleportation array in the Grotto Heaven. At the same time, he released countless killing sword chis that shot towards Jiang Tian. At the same time, he crushed 4 or 5 array pestles in a row, and the restrictions and formations set up all over the Grotto Heaven instantly exploded. Wind, lightning, earth, and fire surged, dark winds and cold waves whistled, sharp arrows and spears densely packed together, and vast might strangled towards Jiang Tian from all directions. "Kill!" Jiang Tian remained unmoved. His expression was cold and hard like iron, and his eyes emitted a merciless and cold light. His sword soared into the sky, and it tore through the sky as it slashed towards Zhou Zian. From the moment the Xianming Grotto Heavens group did not open the gates or disperse the enchantment, Jiang Tian had already sentenced them to death in his heart. At that moment, Jiang Tian already had the upper hand. Regardless of whether they threatened him or begged for mercy, he would definitely kill them. Nothing could stop him. Furthermore, if he did not kill them, how was he to intimidate the Northern Sea and other worlds? He would make those old foxes who had yet to die listen to Kong Teichu's orders. Jiang Tian did not use absolute heaven sword, but an ordinary flying sword. It was even of a very low grade, but it hummed loudly. Sword chi was in thousands of layers, and every layer was like a raging sea with towering waves. It was peerlessly sharp and unstoppable. The boundless sword chi was accompanied by the rumbling and howling of laws. Chi La. The forces of countless restrictions and formations, as well as Zhou Zian's killing dermic swords, were instantly cleaved apart by Jiang Tian's flying sword. It was like a wave being split apart by a torpedo. It failed to provide any form of resistance. In just a snap of a finger, Jiang Tian's flying sword instantly penetrated Zhou Zian's head. Bang! Zhou Zian's head exploded like a smashed watermelon. Red and white matter splattered in all directions. His skull, which was as translucent as celestial jade, scattered in all directions. His headless corpse spurted out waves of blood that dyed the sky red as it fell to the ground. A miniature person flew out from Zhou Zian's head. It had the same features as him. It was his nascent soul. The nascent soul's face was filled with horror and resentment. He gritted his teeth and pinched his fingers, turning into a flying sword. However, it had only flown a few dozen meters away before it was crushed by the rolling sword rays. It had completely died. Jiang Tian didn't stop and charged towards Marulong, who was half a step into the divine transformation stage. As for the power of the formation, Jiang Tian didn't care about it at all. The 3-meter-long divine disc rotated and a vast amount of true yuan spread out in all directions, instantly shattering the formation. The flying sword didn't stop either. It circled around in the air and slashed towards Taoist Huang Qi like lightning. Taoist Huang Qi was scared out of his wits. Since the teleportation formation was far away, he directly gave up on using it and rushed towards the top of the grotto heaven, trying to break out. The flying sword rushed into the heavens and emitted a loud rumbling sound. It drew out spatial fluctuations and formed a long tail of turbulence. It pierced through an enormous meteorite with a radius of 10 li. That was the artificial moon of the mysterious underworld grotto, an energy meteorite extracted from the depths of the cosmos. Today, it had been shattered by a single sword strike. Taoist Huang Qi did not manage to dodge and was killed by the sword. Senior Tai Chu, please spare my life. The last death-defying cultivator was so scared that his legs trembled. His face was pale as he begged for mercy and was about to escape. Jiang Tian just waved his sleeve and the gunmetal block array smashed down like a mountain, directly crushing him into a meat patty. He turned into a cloud of blood mist that filled the air. In an instant, his body and soul were destroyed. After killing the 3 giants, there were even a few disciples of the grotto heaven who secretly released flying swords to kill Jiang Tian. Some of them used the previous arrangements to activate the formations and restrictions to launch a sneak attack. Although the flying swords and restrictions were still 1 mile away from Jiang Tian, they were still shattered by Jiang Tian's majestic Dharma power and could not pose any threat to him. They still angered Jiang Tian. I didn't want to bother with you ants and cockroaches, but you just had to court death. Fine, I'll send all of you to heaven. Jiang Tian patted the sky-devouring demonic gourd and thousands of flying swords shot out like a storm of locusts. They intertwined into a sword net and fell from the sky, killing everyone in sight. Immediately, blood flowed like a river. Sword chi rushed into the sky and heads rolled down. There were only a few hundred disciples of the grotto heaven. How could they resist Jiang Tian's peerless killing? This was an indiscriminate attack that could make the entire grotto heaven full of holes. Heavenly Lord, please spare my life. I didn't attack just now. Senior Tai Chu, I'm willing to surrender. I'll take you to the treasury of the grotto heaven. Kong Tai Chu, you're cruel and vicious. You've violated the laws of heaven. You'll suffer retribution in the future. Many disciples and elders of the Xianming grotto heaven either begged for mercy, cried, or cursed. But Jiang Tian didn't care at all. The vast ocean of swords swept the earth and the sword chi whistled in the sky. Galaxy crystal sand flew out from time to time, smashing peak stage golden core cultivators into meat paste, leaving nothing behind. Elder AI, who was screaming in fear, was pierced by a dozen flying swords when he was 10 miles away from the grotto heaven's array formation. After 3 flicks of the fingers, many elders and disciples of the Xianming grotto heaven were killed. Chapter 1502. All the cultivators around the ruins of Winterfell were dumbfounded when they saw this scene through the golden screen. They were scared out of their wits as they lay on the ground, trembling. After a few seconds, one of the elders suddenly said in a trembling voice, "Now, Only Marulong and Fairy Qingshi are left, right? It's too terrifying. This combat strength, the Taichu Heaven Lord is invincible. Someone suddenly shouted. Then, everyone quivered and reacted. They shouted in unison that the Taichu Heaven Lord was invincible and completely submitted to him. They no longer had any thoughts of resistance. Kong Taichu, you destroyed my foundation and ruined my achievements. You made it impossible for me to answer to Prince Chiu Ming and the ruins Emperor's palace. I will kill you one day. At that moment, Marulong had already flown to a dimensional passageway. He scanned it with his divine sense and his expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth in hatred. The dimensional passageway was already open. Space rippled. In just a second, he would be able to pass through the dimensional passageway and fly above the Hylon world, breaking away from Jiang Tian. But at that moment, a cold voice sounded. It was Jiang Tian who had already arrived. Marulong, you don't know that bad people die because they talk too much. If you want it, hurry up and run. Why are you still chattering over there? He slashed his sword across the sky and destroyed the dimensional passageway. This kind of dimensional passageway was strengthened by bloodline imprints. Cultivators who had not been verified by bloodline imprints could not pass through it. Moreover, it was engraved with self-destruction runes. It was much more advanced than the creation gate that Jiang Tian had encountered in the West Earth world. Jiang Tian scanned it with his divine sense and knew that he could not modify or use it. He simply destroyed it with his sword. Kongdichu, Marulong's expression changed. He stepped out of the billowing airwaves and debris and shouted angrily. I am a half-step soul formation cultivator. Moreover, the most important dark underworld law in this grotto heaven is controlled by me. My strength is not something that Xin Chang, the captain of the Golden Crow Guards, can compare to. If you insist on fighting, I may not necessarily lose to you. Jiang Tian had destroyed the teleportation gate, so he could only stay in this world and face Jiang Tian directly. Unless he knelt down and begged for mercy, he could not avoid this battle. Even if he admitted defeat and surrendered, Jiang Tian would not let him go. Jiang Tian's actions were brimming with confidence and even arrogance. It was obvious that he didn't put Marulong in his eyes, which made him burn with anger. Then let's fight. Jiang Tian chuckled, his face full of contempt. You asked for it. Marulong's expression changed a few times. In the end, his face became as cold as steel and his eyes were filled with determination. He performed the righteous steps and formed a series of hand seals, completely activating the most important law of this grotto heaven, the dark underworld cold spring. At that moment, the huge golden screen that monitored the interior of the Xianming paradise became chaotic. The world became gloomy and gloomy as endless waves of Xianming coldness surged. The black streaks of light formed from the laws were like grayish-black winds that had been blown out of hell. They roared as they turned into dragons that coiled around Jiang Tian and tried to devour him. Everyone could only see it through the surveillance cameras outside. At that moment, the grotto heaven within a 100-mile radius shook crazily and let out a rumbling sound, like thunder or an earthquake. It was as if the grotto heaven had a life of its own and had come back to life in an instant. It used all its strength and seemed to be exhausted. The aftermath of the fight between Jiang Tian and Marulong had only passed through a few gaps in the barrier, but it had already torn half of the sky apart. Numerous cracks had appeared in the area within a radius of 500 miles. Countless huge avalanches had occurred. Countless savage beasts and ferocious birds that didn't manage to retreat in time had been shaken into a blood mist. Even the cultivators who were watching nearby, including golden core perfected cultivators, were crushed into pieces. They couldn't withstand the shockwaves that had already been limited and weakened. At the end of the battle, the cold waves of the Xianming law disappeared and the dragons cried. Suddenly, everyone saw a sword aura that seemed to be able to destroy the world suddenly erupt. It was extremely cold and became brighter, as if it were going to illuminate the entire grotto heaven. Then, a 100-mile giant hole suddenly appeared on the array barrier of the grotto heaven. It was like a balloon that had been cut in half by Jiang Tian's heaven-extinguishing sword. The grotto heaven that had lost the support of the array barrier started to collapse uncontrollably, and countless dimensional storms swept over. In the chaos, everyone vaguely saw Marulong's Dharma body as tall as a mountain shatter. The top of his head was cut off and a giant nascent soul exploded. On the other hand, Jiang Tian's black robe was not tainted by a speck of dust. He was completely unscathed and even had the energy to spare. Holding the absolute heaven sword that was dripping with blood, he was like a peerless god of war. Then, Jiang Tian patted the sky-swallowing demonic gourd on his waist and waved his sleeves. The entire Xianming cold spring and the ancient lotus in it, together with Fairy Qingshi who had fainted, turned into a beam of golden light again and rushed out of the platform and the garden. He jumped into the sky and headed straight for the Snow God Palace in the northwest. Boom! As soon as Jiang Tian left, the entire Xianming grotto heaven collapsed completely. The Dharma laws of this world had almost been extracted by Jiang Tian, and there was no longer any support. The bodies of the elders and disciples were completely swallowed by the dimensional storms and crushed into a bloody mist. A quarter of an hour later, Jiang Tian stepped into the gate of the Snow God Palace and threw Fairy Qingshi, who had just woken up, on the ground. I heard that Prince Qiuming of the Ruins Emperor's Palace values you a lot. I can use you as a hostage. I won't kill you for now, but I'll spare your lowly life. The next moment, Jiang Tian ignored Fairy Qingshi, who was so embarrassed and scared that her face turned pale. He looked down at the gate of the Snow God Palace and said coldly, "Kong Teichu is here to destroy your sect." Jiang Tian also pointed his finger and destroyed the gate of the Snow God Palace, killing many of its disciples. No matter how the palace master of the Snow God Palace begged for mercy, Jiang Tian didn't care at all. This sect had once provided material support to Prince Qiuming of the Ruins Emperor's Palace and the 3 guards of the Golden Crow, so Jiang Tian certainly wouldn't forgive them. Thousands of flying swords shot across the sky. Heads rolled and blood flowed like rivers. After 10 seconds, none of the 3,000 disciples escaped and were all killed. Half an hour later, Jiang Tian destroyed the Saber Emperor's palace and the Saber Emperor's lineage. An hour later, Jiang Tian fought 30,000 miles and arrived at the Dusk Cloud sect. He attacked coldly and mercilessly, killing 5,000 disciples and destroying the sect. 8 hours later, Jiang Tian flew above the ruins of Winterfell again and threw down the heads of the Golden Core perfected cultivators of the 6 sects and cities that had surrendered to the Ruins Emperor's palace. The cultivators of the North Sea are impressed by the power of the Heavenly Lord. The cultivators and mortals of the North Sea welcome the Taichu Heavenly Lord into the North Sea. Many sect masters, city lords and elders of the North Sea were scared out of their wits. Their bodies trembled and they knelt on the ground, no longer having the slightest intention to resist. At that moment, the vast North Sea was silent. Countless cultivators of the North Sea had completely surrendered. Chapter 1503. Many Golden Core perfected cultivators in the ruins of Winterfell knelt before Jiang Tian, as if they were subjects facing their emperor. Jiang Tian had once swallowed thousands of Golden Core Grand cultivators in the sky above the ancient demon abyss, as if they weren't worth mentioning. But in fact, that wasn't the case. Golden Core cultivators could live for thousands of years. If their Golden Core didn't perish, their divine souls would exist forever and they would have Dharma forms. Their inner cores could provide endless energy for their bodies, so they could go to outer space. Even in the central galaxy where cultivation was flourishing, they could still dominate a small planet and make billions of creatures worship them. However, there were soul formation, void returning, Tao reunion and even more powerful beings above the Golden Core level in the central galaxy. They were much weaker in planet regions and galaxies. The South Gate twin planets, the Beidou planet region and the entire Milky Way were all located in a desolate area far away from the central galaxy. Cultivation wasn't flourishing. For example, in the ruins of Deity, there was no concrete evidence that the Ruins Emperor had gone beyond the void return level. He was probably still at the soul formation level. So, soul formation cultivators could already be called ancestral patriarchs in the ruins of deity and had a very high status. In the Hylon world, the fertile land world and the barbarian land world, nascent soul cultivators were already at the top of the pyramid and were the ancestral patriarchs and sect masters. So, even though the Yaoqi world was only a level 3 world, a few nascent soul heavenly lords were enough to make it look down on the other worlds and be valued by the ruins Emperor's Palace, becoming the vanguard to attack Earth. In the Baiming world, Dragon Gate, Penglai and Ingzhou, no one had reached the top of the nascent soul level in the past tens of thousands of years. So, golden core cultivators already had a very high status. The entire Baiming world was a few 100,000 miles wide and was equivalent to dozens of Earths, but there were only a few hundred golden core cultivators. Whenever a gold core cultivator appeared in a sect, they would immediately be promoted to the position of elder. The elders and sect leaders would then open their doors and invite all of the countless sects in the Northern Sea realm to a banquet that would last for an entire year. Any individual cultivator could come and celebrate, as it was a major event for the entire world. Furthermore, as long as a cultivator reached the golden core stage, their seniority would automatically rise by 1 level. Even if his master saw him, he would have to greet him as a junior and call him Lord, True Lord. It wasn't because they didn't care about human relationships, but because golden core perfected cultivators were too important. The rise and fall of a sect, a race, or even a world depended on them. Therefore, any praise and good reputation could be added to his body. True Lord. His status was extremely high. However, at this moment, hundreds of golden cores, sect masters and city lords were kneeling before Jiang Tian in unison. How shocking was that? With this grand bow, it meant that Jiang Tian wasn't an existence that was on par with them, and he was far superior to them by a level or even a few levels. It was like a believer worshipping a god or an idol. Everyone was shocked in their hearts, and they even felt sorrowful. After all, in their eyes, Jiang Tian was just a bumpkin from a barren planet like Earth in the solar system. Not to mention going to war with the ruins of immortality, even in front of them, Jiang Tian was just a mantis blocking a car or an ant trying to shake a big tree. He was weak, arrogant, ignorant, ridiculous, and overconfident. And yet, at this moment, the golden core perfected cultivators, sect masters and city lords, who were worshipped by them, were kneeling before Jiang Tian and begging for mercy. How could they not feel sad about the death of a rabbit? However, this feeling only flashed in their minds for a second. The next moment, they would never dare to think about it again. After all, Jiang Tian had completely defeated the Xianming Grotto Heaven and cut off the heads of hundreds of golden core perfected cultivators who were close to the ruins of deity. What? You don't object to me conquering the Xianming Grotto Heaven? Jiang Tian tilted his head and looked at the golden core perfected cultivators with a half smile. At this moment, the golden core perfected cultivators and sect masters trembled and kowtowed. Senior Taichu's strength is earth-shattering and his cultivation method is unparalleled. He can be called a soul formation divine lord, a god in the human world. These barbarians in the ruins of immortality dare to offend the dignity of a god. That's right. At this moment, no matter what level Jiang Tian was at, whether he was a golden core cultivator or a nascent soul cultivator, the fact that Jiang Tian had killed so many nascent soul heavenly lords and even a half-soul formation cultivator meant that he had the power of a soul formation cultivator in their eyes, like a god in the human world. They had already changed the way they addressed Jiang Tian. They no longer called him Senior or Heavenly Lord, but Divine Lord. In the crowd, Yao He, the sect master of the Snow Listening sect, immediately said, "Divine Lord Taichu, please understand. When have we ever objected to you?" He glanced around and shouted, "Have you ever objected? How dare you?" "No." Everyone shook their heads. "You didn't." Yao He was a golden core perfected cultivator after all, and he looked like an immortal. His hair and beard were all white, and he was wearing a wide robe and a wide belt. However, he didn't care about his status at the moment and he was full of flattery. You can say that the North Sea has been waiting for you to come and destroy the Emperor of the ruins of deity. Once you arrived at Winterfell, we were overjoyed. We beat gongs and drums as we came to Winterfell to welcome the godly lord. We didn't expect you to rush to the Xianming Grotto heaven before we could even talk. I can't wait to follow Senior Taichu and kill the barbarians from the ruins of deity, but you're too fast. I can't keep up with you, so I can only cheer for you from behind. Damn you, Yao He, you're so shameless. You were the one who questioned Divine Lord Taichu's ability just now. You were the one who talked behind his back. Zhao Ruifeng, the sect master of the Ice Demon sect, cursed in his heart, but the next moment, he jumped up and said passionately, "That's right. If anyone from the North Sea dares to join the ruins of deity or the Hylon world in the future, I'll be the first to hunt them down." He was so anxious that his face turned pale, and he did all kinds of evil things. He even used his Dharma form to show off his power. He already considered himself as Jiang Tian's #1 henchman. Then, the other sect masters jumped up and expressed their opinions. They were really frightened by Jiang Tian's methods. He broke the Grotto Heaven's barrier with a finger, and the 7 overlords had activated the laws of the Grotto Heaven, which were comparable to the power of a soul formation cultivator. However, they were still killed by Jiang Tian as if they were vegetables. They were only golden core cultivators, and there was still a huge gap between them and the soul formation level. They were no match for Jiang Tian. In the end, even Li Yuan, the sect master of the Wind Cloud sect, who had reached half a step away from the nascent soul level, lowered his head and smiled respectfully. We've all seen Divine Lord Taichu's Dharma power. He's able to suppress the Hylon world and fight against the ruins of deity. He's much more powerful than the sword god of the ruins Emperor's palace. We were indeed afraid of the power of the ocean wave world in the ruins of immortality, so we didn't lend a helping hand. But from now on, we will naturally serve the absolute beginning Divine Lord and obey your orders. We will follow your orders without the slightest hesitation. At this moment, Jiang Tian glanced at him. This person was more sincere and wasn't as exaggerated as the others. Then, the other sect masters and perfected cultivators all knelt down. As for what they said about the ruins of deity and Hylon world sending troops to the lower worlds and enraging heaven, nobody mentioned it anymore. When one's power reached Jiang Tian's level, he could kill nascent soul and golden core cultivators as easily as killing chickens. They were afraid of the overlords of the ruins of deity, but they were even more afraid of Jiang Tian. Then even Li Yuan, who was the most powerful among them, lowered his head to show his loyalty to Jiang Tian. At this moment, even the cultivators who were dissatisfied with Jiang Tian had to admit that Jiang Tian was the overlord of the North Sea. He could even wipe out a sect easily. Most importantly, even Long Xingnan, the saintess of the dragon-rearing sect of the upper worlds, Wu Shujian of the God of War list and Ghost Wolf of the Dark Crow Guards had all submitted to Jiang Tian. What right did they have to resist? Looking at the perfected cultivators kneeling down, Jiang Tian finally burst into laughter. His laughter became louder and louder, shaking the sky. Then, he suddenly stopped and said word by word in front of countless complicated gazes, as if he was announcing to countless cultivators of the North Sea. From today onwards, the North Sea will be restored. All of you are to follow me closely and form the Great Wall of Steel to defend Earth. We will strike at the ruins of deity. Upon sensing Jiang Tian's overflowing dominance, Long Xingnan's heart stirred. 2 streams of hot tears rolled down her beautiful eyes as she muttered, "Father, although I'm useless, I've followed the right person. Just watch from the heavens. Sooner or later, I will follow Senior Grand Primordium to the Ruins Emperor's Hall to avenge you. This is what a true genius is like. A tyrant who dominates the world." Wu Shujian was also shocked as his blood boiled. Other than collecting sword arts and all kinds of treasured swords, what he paid the most attention to was the God of War list. He cultivated diligently every day and competed with those geniuses, hoping to gain the attention of the Ruins Emperor one day and make a name for himself. For example, he was like playing cards with a group of people at the table. But when Jiang Tian came, he flipped the table and broke everything of his old friends to create a new world. Ghost Wolf and Fairy Yao Yu felt Jiang Tian's overflowing dominance and felt that all the geniuses and powerful figures in the ruins of deity paled in comparison to Jiang Tian. Chapter 1504. At that moment, Li Yuan stood up and took a step forward. He bowed and said, "Senior, you just had a huge battle. Why don't you come to my Wind Cloud sect to rest and recuperate?" Although the Shenming Grotto heaven was good, it had been destroyed by Jiang Tian. He guessed that Jiang Tian would need to enter seclusion to raise his cultivation level or recuperate after the battle. That was why he said that. The moment he said that, everyone was envious. Now that he was able to invite Jiang Tian to stay in his sect, he would naturally be able to take advantage of this opportunity to form a friendship with Jiang Tian. Moreover, Jiang Tian still had to fight in the ruins of immortality and leave this world. Li Yuan would then be able to guard this world. However, they did not say anything. After all, Li Yuan's Wind Cloud sect was the largest and had the most abundant spiritual energy. It was also Jiang Tian's best choice. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded slightly and gladly agreed. He also looked at him deeply. Li Yuan was on par with the North Sea Saber Sovereign back then. However, when Long Xingnan led many Grade 3 worlds to kill Jiang Tian on the Dragon Gate's 18 Disc Islands, he did not take action. That would undoubtedly put him under immense pressure. Following that, he led the group and flew towards the Wind Cloud sect unhurriedly. Senior Grand Primordium, Li Yuan can be used. Long Xingnan transmitted her voice to Jiang Tian with her consciousness. Speak. Jiang Tian was a man of few words. His expression was calm. Back then, I came to the lower realm under the orders of the Ruins Emperor's Palace. I joined forces with the factions of Yingzhou, Baiming, and Penglai to set up an ambush on the 18 Disc Islands. I also found Li Yuan. Long Xingnan said, but Li Yuan rejected me. Originally, if he dared to defy orders, I could have led experts to wipe out his sect. However, he was ruthless. He said that he was injured by a fey beast and lost an arm. When Jiang Tian heard that, he scanned Li Yuan with his consciousness and said with a smile, "It was not a fey beast. It was done by an Dharma artifact. Furthermore, the Dharma artifact's grade is not low. There are nomological remnants." I had my suspicions back then, but there was no way to expose them. This person should have rebelled against the Ruins Emperor. Long Xingnan said, Li Yuan's situation is different from Wu Shujian's. Wu Shujian was only subdued by your strength, but Li Yuan shares the same ideals as you. This is the most stable alliance. You're right. Jiang Tian nodded approvingly. Although the world of cultivation has always been dominated by strength, and they fear my strength today, in the future, if they encounter an even more powerful threat, they might betray me. Only by agreeing with one's ideals would one be able to truly agree with them. Many cultivators are willing to die for their ideals. Following that, Jiang Tian looked at Li Yuan and said with a smile, Li Yuan, did you not approve of the Ruins Emperor to begin with? Li Yuan hurriedly bowed and said, Indeed. I've loved ancient records since I was young. I've visited all the sects in the Northern Sea realm, big and small. I've flipped through the records of the primordial era. You don't need to look at those cultivation techniques and the like. Instead, you need to focus on the various anecdotes recorded in ancient records. At this point, his expression turned solemn. I once read in an ancient book that the many worlds surrounding the South Gate 2 stars, including the ruins of immortality, originally came from the solar system. And the Ruins Emperor was an invader, or even a traitor. Indeed, tens of thousands of years have passed since then. However, in our bloodline still flows the bloodline of the ancient sages of Earth. Yes, I've only just figured out the history here, but that's indeed the case, said Jiang Tian. So it's all true. I thought it was just a legend. Li Yuan wore a look of shock. Li Yuan pondered for a moment and said, the glorious achievements of the ancient sages of Earth and the ancient immortal lands, their bravery in the face of danger, their willingness to risk their lives and embark on interstellar wandering, their courageous resistance to perish together with their enemies, all of that deeply inspires and moves me. I have a nagging feeling that even if they were failures, they were still heroes. And even if the Ruins Emperor won the war 10,000 years ago, even if he was stronger, he was nothing but a despicable villain, a clown, when compared to them. In Emperor Zhongli's generation, there didn't seem to be any void reversion or Tao integration experts. At the very least, they did not engage in interstellar travel. Jiang Tian fell silent for a moment as a look of vicissitudes flashed in his eyes. They did not know that their nomological laws and even great Tao were only suitable for the solar system. Once the coordinates of the cosmos shifted, the nomological laws and great Tao would no longer be compatible with the world. Therefore, the moment they arrived at the South Gate 1 star, they entered an era of Tao impairment. They could not even unleash 10 or 20% of their combat strength. Therefore, the Ruins Emperor was able to take advantage of the situation. Despite failing on the verge of success, they were still heroes. At the very least, they left behind roots like you. Jiang Tian gave his final comment. However, after 10,000 years, the Ruins Emperor pursued and burned all of those ancient manuals. He even forbade them from being passed down through word of mouth. Anyone who mentioned them would be immediately suppressed and wiped out. Therefore, most people only know of the Ruins Emperor and do not know of the ancient sages like the Shang Emperor. Li Yuan fell silent for a long while before he gave a self-deprecating laugh. Perhaps I'm a little pedantic. After all, the current ruler is the Ruins Emperor. He's as stable as a mountain. The present Ruins of Immortality rules an entire solar system with dozens of planets of various sizes. He has as many nascent soul cultivators as there are soul formation cultivators under him. This generation is even more prosperous. There are 3 soul formation cultivators, the Academy's teacher, the Ruins Emperor's Palace's Sword God, and the Sky Palace's Sky River Star Lord. As for me, I'm merely a half-step nascent soul. I've been stuck at this juncture for more than 100 years. With such disloyal thoughts, I'm like a mantis under a wheel. It's like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. I can't change anything. All I can do is imagine it. He let out a long sigh and said, however, I can't help but fantasize about how prosperous we would be if the ancient sages won. Don't think too highly of the Ruins Emperor. Jiang Tian smiled faintly and said, the Ruins Emperor's cultivation technique is indeed powerful. At the very least, it's compatible with this solar system. However, the main reason is that he set up an astounding array that drew the spiritual energy of many worlds into the Ruins of Immortality. They have endless resources, allowing them to produce so many geniuses. Is that really the case? Li Yuan revealed a look of anger. Indeed, Ghostwolf said. In fact, as long as these astounding arrays exist, with the level of spiritual energy in your world, you won't be able to reach the nascent soul realm no matter how advanced your cultivation technique is. Originally, your world once had a Xianming grotto heaven that fell from the depths of the cosmos. You could have used it to break through to the nascent soul realm, but you saw the result. Li Yuan's body trembled as a cold glint flashed in his eyes. Indeed, when the Xianming grotto heaven fell into this world, we were overjoyed. However, we immediately alerted the Ruins Emperor's palace, and Prince Qiuming sent people down to occupy it. What are they talking about? Wu Shujian looked at Long Xingnan in surprise. Clearly, he did not know the inside story of the Ruins of Immortality. Fellow Taoist, you don't know? Long Xingnan quickly sent a voice transmission with her divine consciousness and briefly explained. Immediately, Wu Shujian and Fairy Yao Yu's mouths opened wide as the muscles at the corners of their eyes twitched. What? The Ruins Emperor has occupied our ancestral land? Damn it, I'm going to kill him. Wu Shujian was so angry that his lungs almost exploded. If that's the case, Senior Ao Feng and the others are truly admirable. Fairy Yao Yu had a complicated expression. She thought that she was high and mighty and looked down on the cultivators of the lower realms. She did not expect that they were the ones who knew the truth of history. If they failed, they would either be exterminated or enslaved. Jiang Tian sighed. The victors would never treat the losers as life forms of the same level. much less give them a chance to develop and strengthen themselves. The Ruins Emperor is smart. After extracting the spirit chi, he still used the 100 Moons Academy to select talents from the various worlds. He created an opening for the slaves so that they would not be so desperate. That way, some of the talents would be grateful and loyal, following him to their deaths. For example, me, Wu Shujian's expression turned bitter as his heart was filled with sorrow. He thought to himself that he was a fool. His cultivation resources had been plundered, and he still worked for the Ruins Emperor. For example, Yu Linzi. However, Jiang Tian did not mention Wu Shujian as he said with a mocking expression. He thought that everything he had, his cultivation level, reputation, and status, was given to him by the Ruins Emperor. He was grateful to the Ruins Emperor. Therefore, even before his death, he was filled with fighting spirit and refused to take a step back. He believed that he was fighting for what he believed in and that his death was honorable. In fact, he was just foolishly loyal. He did not know that everything he had today belonged to him in the first place. However, it was taken away by the Ruins Emperor and returned to him. In fact, without the Ruins Emperor, this world could have been better. Chapter 1505. They arrived at the Wind Cloud sect as they spoke. This was a dojo with a radius of dozens of miles. It was located on top of a towering mountain. There were many palaces and many disciples. There were at least 10,000 people. In the central hall, Jiang Tian sat at the head of the table and no one had any objections. All the golden core perfected cultivators sat down in fear. Like flowing water, beautiful maids presented all kinds of spirit fruits. Each of them was of a high grade. A mouthful of aroma filled their mouths and a stream of spirit chi flowed into their dantian. Jiang Tian said, "I'm going to cultivate in seclusion for a few days to improve. Li Yuan, tell us about the ancient records that you've read. Ghost Wolf, tell us the truth about how you plundered the ruins of immortality." The two of them bowed and nodded. "What? The ancient books? The ruins of deity?" Everyone was suspicious. However, as Li Yuan unfurled the ancient scrolls one by one, all the cultivators were astonished. "I don't believe it. I don't believe it." A sect master got up and smashed his teacup. He said angrily, "How could our ancestor come from a backward planet like the solar system?" Then he ran away. "You're asking for it? How can you be so rude in front of Senior Tai Chu?" Wu Shujian was enraged. Many silver fish-like flying swords appeared behind him, as if they were going to kill the cultivator on the spot. "Don't kill him. He's just having a mental breakdown." Jiang Tian raised his hand to stop him. Wu Shujian's face softened. He immediately put away his flying swords and stood respectfully. When he first heard the truth from Long Shengnan, he also had a mental breakdown. The other heavenly sect masters and elders remained silent. Zhao Ruifeng of the Ice Fiend sect mumbled, "Impossible. That's impossible. The Ruins Emperor is like a deity. How could he be an invader? This history must be fake. You're making it up." Yao He smiled and said, "Senior Tai Chu, there's no need to do that. We've already submitted to you. Why do you have to do that?" "Look again." Jiang Tianxin waved his hand and many images appeared. They were many words on earth. He said leisurely, "The language you're using is actually the Oracle Bone script and Zhongding script, exactly the same as the ones on earth. And your surnames, appearances? You don't believe me? There is more." Jiang Tian also unfolded the image disk array left behind by Dragon Whiskers. The images and voices of the ancient people from tens of thousands of years ago, the brave resistance and the tragic sacrifice, were transmitted over. In fact, Jiang Tian had even shown them the memories of the Western Heaven Gate's Guardian General's soul fragment in the Thunder Lock Forbidden Land. "I originally believed that as descendants of the Ruins Emperor, we would receive his endless blessings and grace. I even believed that my descendants would have a chance of being selected by 100 Moons Academy. I'm so grateful. I didn't expect that our ancestors were all killed by him. We all have a blood feud." Yao He's mental state also collapsed in an instant. He couldn't stop laughing until tears came out of his eyes. He sat on the ground and patted his knees. Ha, ha. Long Xingnan was still very calm at first. After all, she had learned about this part of history, but when she saw the images left behind by Dragon Whiskers, she was shocked like never before. She couldn't hold it anymore and laughed while pointing at Wu Shujian and Fairy Yaoyu. Long Xingnan, are you crazy? Why are you pointing at me? Wu Shujian said angrily. An abandoned person. Long Xingnan pointed at his nose with tears in her eyes and laughed until she was about to cry. I finally know why the people in the ruins of immortality are used to calling Senior Tai Chu an abandoned person. Actually, you're also an abandoned person. I'm also an abandoned person. You're all abandoned people. Everyone looked at her coldly. Long Xingnan's finger pointed at their noses one by one. In the end, she pointed at Ghost Wolf's nose and stopped laughing. Her eyes were terrifyingly cold. You're also an abandoned person. She burst into tears and said, if we weren't abandoned people, why would my father be killed by the ruins Emperor's palace and even exterminated when he just wanted to negotiate with Senior Tai Chu? At that moment, Zhao Ruifeng snapped out of his daze and smiled stiffly. It's been tens of thousands of years. It's time to clean up the trash. Ruins Emperor actually treats us pretty well. At the very least, if we are outstanding, we have a chance of entering 100 Moons Academy and staying in the ruins of immortality. Don't tell me you want to go back on your oath and think of entering the ruins Emperor's palace again? Wu Shujian bellowed and wanted to kill again. However, he gave up after being glared at by Jiang Tian. Don't be grateful to ruins Emperor. The next scene is a top secret of the ruins of immortality. Even I don't have the right to see it. It was stolen from deep within Sky Palace. Everyone, take a look. Following Ghost Wolf's sinister laughter, he raised his hand and released a gigantic golden beam of light. It revealed shocking scenes that left everyone dumbfounded in disbelief. The scene was taken from high up in the sky. A vast and endless world appeared in front of everyone's eyes. The world was enveloped in resplendent essence chi. Cranes danced in the sky as true dragons circled. There were divine mountains and rivers everywhere. Immortal mountains and pavilions stood in great numbers as though it was a paradise. This is the ruins of immortality, exclaimed an experienced and knowledgeable person. The scene gradually zoomed in. Clearly, it was an image imprint that was recorded while flying away from the ruins of immortality. As the angle of view increased, starlight gathered as a massive star appeared on the side of the ruins of immortality. It emitted countless blazing beams of light. Twin Stars South Gate. Everyone immediately realized. Immediately following that, as the scene zoomed out again, planets like Fertile Earth, Halon, Northern Wilderness, Southern Wilderness, and other planets orbited along with the ruins of immortality in a fixed orbit around Twin Stars South Gate, a superstar that was 10 times or even 100 times larger than the solar system Sunday. That's not right. Halon world only has 4 satellites, which are the 4 worlds of Dragon Gate, Northern Sea, Penglai, and Ingzhou. Why does it seem like there are 9? There are 5 more. Suddenly, Yao He noticed a detail as he exclaimed, "Oh, you aren't really blind after all." Ghost Wolf laughed strangely as he formed hand seals with both hands. He kept swiping at the gigantic golden screen as the scene suddenly zoomed in on a gigantic block of ice that seemed to be hanging under the starry sky. This is the Northern Sea world that we are in. Everyone didn't even blink their eyes. With their golden core strength, they could escape the gravitational field of the Northern Sea world and do a short spacewalk. However, it was extremely difficult to cross the Southgate Galaxy, or even fly to nearby planets such as the Hylon world, a satellite, or the Penglai world. They were like frogs at the bottom of a well. They had never seen what the Northern Sea world looked like from space. However, the Northern Sea world was the furthest planet away from Twin Stars South Gate. It didn't have enough light and was covered in snow, which was the only one among all the worlds. So, they could immediately see it. As the image zoomed in, they saw a giant funnel-shaped array the size of an asteroid between the Northern Sea world and the Halon world. This funnel-shaped array was extremely terrifying. It was even 1/10 the size of the northern sea world and had a radius of at least 10,000 miles. It looked extremely shocking. It was glittering with golden light and looked indestructible. It was very heavy and had a metallic texture. It was moving slowly, as if it were a planet that had existed since the beginning of time. On top of the formation, countless complex and mysterious rune arrays were inscribed. They were densely packed and innumerable. Those runes shone and kept flashing. They spun slowly, like the Tai Chi giving birth to the yin and yang, and then the 5 elements. They kept moving and contained a hint of the Grand Tao. Everyone looked at it dumbfoundedly. They felt as if the stars in the universe, the sun and the moon were rising and all the laws in the world were changing. Then, they saw streaks of chaotic chi being drawn out of the northern sea world and being injected into the funnel-shaped array. As the funnel-shaped magical artifact slowly turned, the runes glowed brightly, and for a moment, they turned into vast and mighty primordial purple chi. Like liquid being squeezed out by a syringe, they emerged from the tip of the funnel and poured in the direction of the below world. The image flashed again, as if it was following the direction of the chi flow. Then, many strange but extremely complicated and giant arrays appeared, receiving and pushing the Hongmeng purple chi and the spirit chi of heaven and earth. In the end, 4 other extremely vast streams of spirit chi appeared and merged with it. Finally, they were injected into an even larger array outside the Halon world. In the end, they merged into the relay arrays again and were released and pushed in the direction of the ruins of immortality. After millions or even tens of millions of kilometers, they were pushed to the ruins of immortality's Emperor's Palace and the 100 Moon Academy. The spirit chi there surged again and again, almost like an immortal cave. Everyone was dead silent. Ghost Wolf's voice sounded faintly. Many worlds, whether they're planetary grade or satellite grade, have set up these chi-drawing spell formations around them. They have been silently intercepting and extracting spirit chi for at least 5,000 years. And they will continue to exist. In the end, all the worlds will become real wastelands without a trace of spirit chi, just like the ancient Earth entering the Age of Doom. Your lifespan will decline to a few decades or even a decade. You will be reduced to inferior life forms. What's even more terrifying is that if the chi-drawing array is activated to the extreme, it will turn all living beings, be it plants, demon beasts, or cultivators, into the tiniest essence and devour them all. At that time, this place will be a barren land of 100,000 kilometers, without a trace of life. In fact, what he said was only part of the truth. Earth had the existence of Planet Destroyer, which had devoured a lot of spirit chi. Now, it had been activated by Jiang Tian, and the spirit chi had recovered. However, the people present didn't know, so it sounded even more shocking. And even if he didn't mention the example of Earth, in the Alpha Centauri system, there were indeed planets whose spirit chi had been sucked dry and turned into dead wastelands. 300 years ago, the satellite of the fertile Earth world, the Blue Sky world, suddenly lost all vitality. All the demon beasts and cultivators died within a year. Sky Palace's special envoy came to the lower realm to convey that an extraterrestrial civilization had invaded. It seems they were completely devoured by these chi-drawing arrays. Wu Shujian had already remembered and said with a pale face. Ghost Wolf nodded slowly and then said coldly, according to Sky Palace's calculations, in 20 years, the Northern Ocean world's spirit chi will completely dry up. Destiny and the Blue Sky world are no different. As soon as these words came out, the entire audience was dead silent. Everyone's complexion changed wildly. Chapter 1506. I admit it. We are the abandoned people, the abandoned people. So, Earth is our ancestral land. The Ruins Emperor is the one occupying it. Zhao Ruifeng finally accepted reality as he shook his sleeves and said coldly, Ruins Emperor, isn't it enough that you snatched our ancestral land? You could have left us a way out. You could have even made us slaves. We aren't rebellious. But he laughed, but his face was already covered in tears. We are not the abandoned people. We are the masters of this world. Long Shengnan looked up at the sky and cursed at the top of her lungs. The ruler treats the people as weeds, and the people treat the ruler as an enemy. Since the ruins emperor doesn't treat me as a human, I'll chop off his head. Destroy his ruins emperor palace. Follow the grand primordium divine lord and wage war against the ruins emperor. Destroy all injustice and avenge our ancestors. Create a new world for our descendants. Following Li Yuan's shout, all the sect masters and perfected lords felt their blood boil as they raised their arms and shouted. Wage war against the ruins emperor and destroy all injustice. Even Wu Shujian, Fairy Yao Yu, and the sinister ghost wolf could no longer remain calm. They shouted in unison as their spirits soared into the sky. At that moment, Jiang Tian was no longer suppressing Northern Sea with brute force. Instead, he had become their leader. They were all loyal and hot-blooded. They were willing to fight 100 battles to defend Northern Sea and conquer the ruins of immortality with him. We cultivators follow our hearts. We kill and are invincible. But we have to understand why we fight and why we kill. Jiang Tianqing stood up with a satisfied expression and said with a smile. He smiled and said, "Today, I'll give you an answer. The strong cultivators should fight for the weak. We should establish our hearts for the world and our lives for the people. We should inherit the supreme arts of the past sages and establish peace for all ages. We will keep that in mind." After the meeting, Jiang Tian immediately entered seclusion deep in the mountain behind the Wind Cloud sect. He also got Li Yuan to lead the sect disciples to the Dragon Gate, Panglai, and Yingzhou worlds to reveal the truth of the ruins of immortality. In the back mountain of the Wind Cloud sect, there were layers upon layers of spirit-gathering formations and restrictions, creating a world of vitality. In this place, there were green mountains and clear waters, birdsong, fragrant flowers, and trees. The spiritual energy here was more abundant than the outside world, shrouded in clouds and mist. There were red-crowned cranes and white luans flying in the air, and huge Qilin beasts crawling on the blue stone. Jiang Tian sat cross-legged on a piece of blue stone. He was dressed in white and had an otherworldly temperament. His expression was very calm. With a flick of his finger, rumbling sounds could be heard as a Xianming frosty spring with a circumference of about 1 kilometer floated in midair. If someone else was here, they would definitely be shocked. This was because Jiang Tian's sky-devouring demonic gourd was simply too big. It could actually store so much material. In fact, the sky-devouring demonic gourd was also a good magic treasure. Jiang Tian suspected that it was left behind in the Age of Immortals, or even earlier in the Age of Struggle for the Three Realms. As Jiang Tian's cultivation increased, he kept nourishing it with his true essence and refining it with space laws. The space inside the gourd had also been growing and expanding. It was now at least dozens of miles wide. Jiang Tian suspected that when he reached the nascent soul level in the future, he could even turn it into a grotto heaven. The Xianming frosty spring was extremely heavy and exuded a cold aura. It was like a huge crystal with green waves rippling and sparkling light, like a giant sea floating in the air. There were a lot of invisible space laws surrounding it, which exploded from time to time and froze the space, causing the essence qi in the area to stagnate. It was like an iron plate that didn't move at all. The Xianming frosty spring is in a liquid state. In terms of concentration, it's much less than the Dinghai pearl. But fortunately, its volume is amazing. It's more than 100 tons. After swallowing and refining it, I can still condense a huge amount of space laws, enough to perfect my Dinghai Ice divine body and form a law imprint. Jiang Tian's eyes were firm and his face was as stiff as iron. A giant green lotus was growing in the vast Xianming frosty spring. The wind blew and the spring water rippled. The green lotus leaves swayed and the golden lotuses bloomed, making a series of metallic clanging sounds. However, the strong vitality made people feel as if they had arrived at the beginning of the world. There was a misty energy in the air, as if they had arrived at the beginning of the world. But this ancient lotus is actually, Jiang Tian observed carefully and immediately recognized it. His eyes could not help but light up again and he sighed. The bitter green lotus golden lotus. It's at least in the top 10 on the list of exotic flowers and rare wood. It's nothing in the deity realm of 9 heavens and the divine realm, nor is it a deity material. But in our universe, it's definitely a treasure. It's rare even in the central galaxy. It's as valuable as a planet of life. Thinking of this, Jiang Tian's lips curled into a smile. He felt that this trip was not in vain. He had gained a lot. Cultivation worlds, including the central galaxy, had rankings for many exotic objects. They were usually divided into 5 lists: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. There were also some miscellaneous lists. For example, fire elemental heavenly materials and earthly treasures gave birth to the list of exotic flames. The famous 9 suns sky fire and fiery lotus earthly fire were among them. Wood elemental cultivation materials also had a list of exotic flowers and rare wood. And the green lotus golden lotus was at least in the top 10. It had a strong growth ability. There was a saying in the cultivation world: green lotus grows in the bitter sea, golden lotus grows in the raging fire. It meant that even in extremely harsh places like the bitter sea and the raging fire, it could still absorb vitality and spirit chi to grow and strengthen itself. It could even turn into chaotic chi. It could grow in the Xianming frosty spring, which showed how powerful it was. And the harsher the growing conditions, the stronger its power would be. Wood elemental treasure materials were usually used for healing, nourishing, and repairing. They were slightly weaker in terms of attacking and could be easily suppressed by fire elemental and metal elemental dharma treasures. But the green lotus golden lotus was different. It had the vitality of wood elemental treasure materials, which could nourish its owner, and the sharpness and toughness of metal elemental treasure materials. The primal chaos source cauldron and the absolute heaven sword are both immortal materials and divine materials. Once they're used, they're earth-shattering and their power is too strong. The aftershocks might be sensed by the grand cultivators from outside the region. Jiang Tian's eyes flashed with a bright light, and then he revealed a trace of joy as he thought to himself, after refining the Xianming frosty spring, I'll refine the green lotus golden lotus and use it as a dharma treasure. Its power is comparable to a Tao artifact and has reached the level of a sacred weapon or a sacred artifact. The primal chaos source cauldron was a divine material and the absolute heaven sword was an immortal artifact. Both of them were of extremely high levels. Once they were used, the laws and aftershocks would spread extremely far and even spread to the central galaxy. Of course, the aftershocks were extremely subtle and radiated extremely far away. Normal cultivators, even nascent soul cultivators and soul formation cultivators, would find it difficult to detect. However, there were some more terrifying beings, some grand cultivators at the universe level, whose primordial spirits were placed in the void and whose immortal will could cover an endless galaxy billions of light years away. Not to mention such power, even if you said their name or thought of them, they would be able to sense it clearly and there would be nowhere to hide. That was what the saying, God is watching from 3 feet above meant. Besides, the power of the absolute heaven sword and the primal chaos source cauldron was like nuclear radiation that would remain and wouldn't dissipate for thousands of years or even longer. Those inexplicably powerful existences could easily track down Jiang Tian by following the map. Although Jiang Tian had cultivated for 10,000 years and was very experienced, it was impossible for him to kill people who were at a higher level endlessly. If he met a soul formation cultivator at the moment, he could still hold on for a while and kill many of them, but at least he could escape unscathed. However, if he met a Tao integration cultivator or even a tribulation cultivator at the universe level, even if he had thousands of mystical powers, thousands of mystic techniques, and 9 types of divine bodies, he would still be crushed by the other party with one finger. One had to know that no matter how strong Jiang Tian's laws were, even if they were laws that were universal in the universe, they were still laws after all. Being on par with Tao laws was already the limit, and it would be difficult to go any higher. That was why it was said that the cultivation levels were very strict, like a natural chasm. Every cultivator attached great importance to it and couldn't wait to use all their strength to improve their cultivation level. Therefore, Jiang Tian wasn't worried for nothing. Previously, Jiang Tian had been very careful. He wouldn't use the absolute heaven sword until the last moment. The primal chaos source cauldron was also refined into his body with the thick earth dragon body and covered with the sky-stealing sun-swapping technique. However, the green lotus and golden lotus were different. Holding this item was enough to increase Jiang Tian's strength to the soul formation stage, but it wouldn't be too terrifying and expose himself to the other party. After making up his mind, Jiang Tian took a deep breath and took the green lotus and golden lotus, leaving only the Xianming cold spring. Then, Jiang Tian threw out the time array disc again. It flew above his head and hung down silk-like strands of golden light, enveloping his body and accelerating time. Refine. Jiang Tian's expression was slightly stern. He softly said a word and used the Taotai origin returning law, the primal chaos creation art, and other mystic techniques to slowly devour and refine the Xianming cold spring. At this moment, the aura of Jiang Tian's sea-calming ice divine body began to rise continuously and soon reached an unimaginable height. Even if Jiang Tian didn't use the Forbidden Realm, the essence qi and space within a radius of 10 miles to 100 miles were instantly frozen and turned into transparent iron blocks. The nomological imprints in the golden core gradually solidified and continuously advanced in the direction of the nomological imprints, evolving into the nascent soul stage. At this moment, the news of Jiang Tian destroying the 3 golden crow guards, killing Prince Spring Rain, and destroying the Xianming Grotto Heaven had already spread throughout the ruins of immortality. On the continent of the ruins of immortality, there were many dukes and vassal states, as well as 36 provinces and 273 counties. The fertile land was endless and prosperous. In addition, there were 6 grotto heavens, like stars hanging high in the sky, like stars surrounding the moon, guarding the ruins' emperor's palace. The imperial city, the ruins of immortality, was located in the most prosperous Zhongyuan province of the 36 provinces. There were thousands of miles of fertile land, and there were all kinds of rare plants, spirit springs, and strange stones. Numerous spirit veins formed mountains that converged from all directions like giant dragons. And the imperial city was at the center of the many spirit veins, like stars surrounding the moon. South of the ruins of immortality, under the dragon vein, was the academy. It was the academy that had experienced tens of thousands of years of wind and rain, and had a longer history than the empire of the ruins of immortality. It had nurtured countless famous generals and great cultivators for the ruins of immortality and the world. It wasn't mysterious, but it was close to godlike. It was also the place that countless cultivators in the ruins of immortality had to go through all kinds of hardships to enter. Verdant mountains rose abruptly from the plains and rivers, reaching straight into the sky. The 100 Moon Academy silently appeared in the mortal world, standing tall for thousands of years. Although the academy didn't hang high in the sky like the 6 grotto heavens, firmly rooted in the ground like immortal palaces, its reputation and strength firmly suppressed the 6 grotto heavens. Its status was supreme. Its strength was unrivaled. Its connections extended throughout the ruins of immortality, reaching up to the ruins' emperor's palace, the sky palace, the royal army, and down to the vassal states and provinces. It could be said to be all-encompassing. Chapter 1507. Under the clear and beautiful rays of the morning sun, there was an extremely large area at the foot of the mountain. It was a gentle slope made up of green meadows and hills, undulating up and down like frozen waves. The green grass was like a painting. A dozen or so intersecting and complicated paths could be faintly seen in the painting. Beside the paths were several flowers and trees planted at intervals. At the center of the meadow, there were even more flowers and trees, pink and white. It was unknown whether they were the color of apricot flowers or peach blossoms. They were irregular but extremely beautiful as they were smeared across the slope, beautiful to the extreme. Above the grassy slope, there were black and white academy buildings that weren't tall but stretched out for who knew how many buildings. It was like an immortal realm, but it was situated in the mortal world. Whether they were ordinary people or powerful cultivators, they could all see it with their eyes. This gave them endless confidence. 100 Moon Academy was silent, but in everyone's hearts, it was as if as long as the academy was here, this endless and vast continent would always be stable, never sinking. Between these buildings, there were thousands to tens of thousands of cultivators. Most of them were very young. There were youths whose faces were as brilliant as the sun, young girls who were as gentle as flowers shining on water. However, their cultivations were almost at nascent soul, or even nascent soul. The academy could be said to be filled with talents. Their social status was also different. There were some who wore embroidered clothes, their bodies flickering with precious light. They clearly came from rich and powerful clans, even royal and imperial clans. However, they were extremely humble, pulling a chancellor aside, humbly asking about their sword Tao and divine abilities. There were some who wore old green clothes, holding scrolls and writing brushes, writing and drawing, reciting poems and essays like Confucian scholars. There were some whose hands and feet were thick, their faces covered in dust. There were also some who were descendants of farmers and blacksmiths, but they were full of arrogance, their auras surging into the heavens. They argued and cursed with others, wanting to compete in a contest of strength. There were even some who had the aura of bandits, their faces evil. They came from the wilderness of the Jianghu, or were iron-blooded and murderous, wearing worn-out armor. They were actually low-level border soldiers who had survived hundreds of battles. There were also some who had shifty eyes, running as if they were flying, their actions sneaky. They were probably thieves before. The academy was just like this, accepting all kinds of people. Whether it was the imperial clan, the nobles, or the common people, as long as they had talent, they could enter the academy, giving the cultivators of the lower realms an exit, opening a hole in the strictly hierarchical barrier. That was why heavenly talents like Yu Qilin could see hope, why they were deeply grateful to the Empire of Immortal Ruins, why they fought to the death without any regret. Outside a small building, there was a small courtyard formed by a bamboo forest. There was a spiritual spring flowing through it. A young man, whose face was full of freckles and who was wearing the shabby uniform of the low-level soldiers, was lying on a rattan chair quietly and even at ease. He was reading the chapter on grand sensing in his left hand, and he was twisting a bamboo stick on the ground casually with his right hand. His cotton-padded clothes were full of oil stains. His black hair was a little naturally curly, but his face was extremely clean. Even his eyebrows were particularly clear and transparent. Behind him, there was an 11 or 12-year-old girl who was struggling to carry a bucket of water to her room. The girl was thin and her face was dark, but her eyes were clear. She was wearing a maid's uniform that she had found somewhere, and it was too loose. The girl moved the bucket, which was half her height, to the side of the water tank with difficulty. Then she stood on a stool beside the tank and poured the water into the tank with great difficulty with all her strength. Then she began to wash the rice and vegetables. While she was steaming the rice, she took a rag and began to wipe the tables, chairs, windows, and doors. Not long after, steam rose up and enveloped her thin body. "Young master, it's time to eat." After the time it took for 2 sticks of incense to burn, the girl, Sang, had finally finished some of her work. She placed chicken soup and rice on the table in the courtyard and called out to the young man. Song Baoxin stood up and walked lazily into the courtyard with a book in his hands. His parents had died early, and he carried a blood feud with them. Later, he wandered to the city of Wei, a border city, and made a living by killing bandits. Later, he came to the ruined capital to protect Princess Goyu, who was married into a political alliance. He displayed exceptional talent and was accepted into the 100 Moons Academy. Now, he was an outer disciple. However, the examination at the back of the mountain was about to begin. Only by passing the examination could one enter the back of the mountain of the academy and become a direct disciple of the headmaster's disciple. Only then could one have hopes of reaching the top of the God of War list and take revenge. At this moment, a huge flying ship appeared in the distant sky with a flash. It made a huge roaring sound as it tore through the air and flew toward the back of the mountain of the academy. What? The academy is grounded and has always strictly prohibited flying in the air or on flying swords. How can there be such a flying ship swaggering through the air? Ah Sang looked up at the huge flying ship that was flickering with treasure light, covered with dense patterns of laws and extremely complicated talisman arrays. She asked in disbelief. This is Prince Chun Yu's flying ship. Grand Chancellor Yen Hua is on it. But he doesn't usually do this. Something big must have happened. Song Baoxin looked up and said with a serious expression. At this moment, it was not just them. Thousands of disciples of the academy walked out and looked up at the flying ship with expressions of extreme shock. The rules of the academy were strict. At this place, civil officials would get off their sedan chairs and generals would get off their horses. Even the royal family had to walk up the mountain with caution. Such a flying ship flying through the air and entering the back of the mountain was extremely rare in the academy's 10,000 years. Something big must have happened, and it must be something earth-shattering. Song Baoxin did not even have time to eat. He quickly walked to the back of the outer gate of the academy and entered the highest level of the stone library of other mountains, which was called where all the arts in the world were gathered. He found that many outer gate disciples had already gathered here. They must have wanted to see the situation at the back of the mountain. Even, they could see through the window that there was actually a huge flat cliff plateau with a radius of 10 miles on the extremely steep mountain from the academy's direction. There was a mirror-like small lake on the cliff plateau. There were wildflowers in full bloom, tranquil grass, towering ancient trees, and vines that twined like giant pythons. Under the towering ancient trees, there were more than 10 simple houses with smoke curling up from the kitchen chimneys. There was a silver line pouring down from the cliff behind the houses. It was actually a waterfall far away. A group of white cranes danced in the sky, chirping and flying between the cliff and the waterfall. At this moment, such a beautiful scene in the morning light came into his eyes. Song Baoxin was stunned and did not know what to say. Feeling the quiet chi of heaven and earth and the smell of life in the back of the mountain, a strong thought came into his mind. No matter who wanted to destroy such beauty, he would definitely destroy them. In fact, this was not only his thought, but also the thought of thousands of disciples of the academy. They loved this land very deeply. At this moment, Song Baoxin noticed that even Qing Aojuan, Su Chongqing, Luo Chongxing, and other geniuses and geniuses, who were famous in the ruins of immortality, were here. He knew that they had followed Prince Chun Yu to the mortal world to gain experience and capture a bandit leader named Kong Teichu. They were originally disciples of the back of the mountain and could receive personal guidance from the headmaster. But now they were left in the outer gate. Prince Chun Yu and Yu Linzi, who was fifth on the God of War list, were not here. Obviously, the situation was more serious than he had expected. He could not hold back his curiosity. He went forward and bowed respectfully. Then he asked, "Senior Brother Cheng, Senior Brothers, why is Yu Linzi not back?" At his question, hundreds of disciples turned to look at Qing Aojuan. Even if they did not turn to look, they pricked up their ears and listened quietly. For a moment, the entire top floor was silent. It was as if they could hear the clouds in the sky and the falling flowers in the air. Cheng Aojuan's face was gloomy and a trace of pain flashed across his eyes. After a long silence, he finally said slowly, "He stayed in the northern sea world. But we have received news that he has died. He was killed by Kong Teichu." What? Everyone was dumbfounded. Shock was written all over the faces of many disciples, as if they had seen a ghost. Some of the male disciples gritted their teeth in hatred, their faces livid. Many of the female disciples looked sorrowful and sobbed softly. The whole academy was filled with a sorrowful atmosphere. Yu Linzi came from the desolate northern sea world. He was humble and gentle, generous and benevolent. He especially took care of the disciples who came from humble backgrounds. He often guided them in their cultivation and even gave them elixirs and weapons. When the disciples of the royal family bullied them, he would always stand up for them and uphold justice. Young Master is unparalleled in this world. Many of Yu Linzi's little fangirls praised him. They treated him as their dream lover and respected and loved him immensely. But now, he had died in the hands of bandits. How could they not be heartbroken? What? He was killed by Kong Teichu. Song Baoxin was even more agitated. He staggered back a few steps, his face as pale as paper. He spat out a mouthful of blood and almost fell to the ground. He was born poor and came from a small city in the desolate border. Their similar background made Yu Linzi sympathize with him and pay more attention to him. He even secretly taught him some forbidden skills that were not allowed to be cultivated by outer sect disciples. The Academy's Grand Chancellor and the headmaster's 13th core disciple, Yan Hua, flew to the cliff platform and walked through the cobblestone path at the back of the mountain. His face was full of worry and his heart was heavy. Prince Chun Yu was the headmaster's youngest disciple and also his last disciple. He was the headmaster's favorite and their relationship was like that of father and son. He did not know how sorrowful the headmaster would be when he heard the news. He seemed to have lost his soul as he walked through the green fields and meadows. He stepped on the slightly wet ridges and walked onto a wooden bridge. Then, he came to the lake that was as calm as a mirror. The white water birds in the lake floated and sank, hunting for small fish in the water. Whether they succeeded or failed, they raised their heads proudly and either swallowed the fish or shook off the water droplets on their feathers. The footsteps on the wooden bridge attracted the attention of the water birds. However, they were obviously not afraid of people. Instead, they seemed to be curious and intelligent. There was a pavilion in the middle of the wooden bridge. It was quiet and secluded between the lake and the water. A girl wearing the Academy's pale yellow spring chancellor robe was focused on embroidering in the pavilion. Seventh senior sister, Yan Hua stopped and bowed respectfully. A trace of admiration flashed in the depths of his eyes. She was called Jade Lotus Fairy and was the only female among the headmaster's 14 core disciples. Although she looked quiet and elegant, she was actually the top talisman and array master in the ruins of immortality. The entire ruins town was a huge array. The front yard of the academy, the back of the mountain, and even the grass and trees here were all arrays. When activated, they had the power to kill soul formation cultivators. And all of this was done by her. The ancestor of Jade Lotus Fairy's family was one of the founders of the 100 Moon Academy and the headmaster's junior brother. Back then, he was the one who designed and installed the Qi drawing array of countless dimensional worlds. It was an extremely huge project that allowed the spiritual Qi in the boundless territories of various worlds to spread across millions of kilometers and gather in the ruins of immortality. It was said that when the Qi drawing array was activated, even the Emperor of the Ruins was very happy. He said that there were hundreds of moons in the ruins of immortality overnight and named the Academy 100 Moon Academy. Chapter 1508. Fairy Jade Lotus gently put down the needle and thread and stood up. She returned the greeting respectfully. 13th brother, I'm afraid the teacher has already guessed it, but I'm still worried that he can't take it. Let me go with you. In the forest opposite the lake, there was the sound of a flute. There were two men, one playing the flute and the other playing the guqin. They were extremely handsome and looked very similar. They wore the uniform of the Academy's chancellor, but it was obvious that it had been modified. The sleeves and hem of their robes were extremely wide, fluttering like immortals who had retreated from the world. 8th brother and 9th brother were a pair of twin brothers. They loved music the most and comprehended the law of heaven from it. They had both reached the soul formation realm and killed people with the law of music. They were extremely powerful. Yan Hua bowed from afar. 8th brother and 9th brother did not seem to notice as they played the flute, drum, and guqin leisurely. They were completely immersed in it. Along the winding corridor, they passed through the entire lake and passed by a tall and rough stone room. They saw a shirtless man with a dusty face taking out a strange rock from his bag with great difficulty. He carefully placed it in the furnace burning with the sun's essence flames. If the Academy's disciples saw this, they would definitely be shocked and in disbelief. The shirtless man was called Ban Shan. He was ranked 4th among the many personal disciples. He had also reached the soul formation realm and was the Grand Chancellor in charge of the refining faculty. He was also the refining consultant of the Hall of Divine Craftsmen of the Ruins Emperor's Ministry of Works. The mothership of the Golden Crow and the other 9 guards and the God-destroying light cannon were all made by him. When this realm was used, he could even lift a 10,000-foot mountain. Why was it so difficult to even pick up a rock? But Yen Hua could tell at a glance that this rock was actually formed from a planet. Thinking back, 3 years ago, the grand oracles of Sky Palace had suddenly observed something that scared them witless. A satellite with a radius of 3,000 miles around the fertile Earth world had disappeared into thin air in the blink of an eye. They immediately reported it to the ruins Emperor's Palace. Many people guessed that it was an invasion by an extraterrestrial cultivator and sent the Starlight Guard of the 9 guards to investigate several times. At this moment, Yen Hua could not help but understand. It turned out that this star had been stolen by Fourth Brother. He had used the creation mystic technique to shrink the planet to the size of his palm. No wonder the great astrologers had not discovered it. Seeing his junior brother return, Ban Shan smiled, revealing his white teeth. He scratched his head and said embarrassedly, 13th brother, 7th brother, this is not the 8th planet of the Earth ring. I picked it up in the deep space outside the realm. Here, the 300 taels of silver exposed. Yen Hua did not expose him. In Ban Shan's place, everything could be refined. Once, Ban Shan had almost refined the entire back of the mountain, causing the teacher to fly into a rage. He bowed deeply and Ban Shan hurriedly returned the greeting seriously. Beside him, Fairy Jade Lotus shook her head helplessly and let out a soft laugh. Next to it was 5th senior brother's room. He was dressed in white and was creating a qilin in a huge wide-mouthed bottle that was more than 10 meters tall and filled with potions. He was intoxicated and ignored Yen Hua's return. After meeting all the senior and junior brothers, Yen Hua finally came to a spacious and simple hut. The teacher was sitting upright on a stone bench, reading a book in front of the table. Greetings, teacher. Yen Hua kowtowed 3 times and bowed 9 times. Beside him, Fairy Jade Lotus bowed deeply. The teacher was dressed in an old green robe and was unusually tall. His face was old and thin, and he had a dignified bearing, but there was also a hint of kindness. There seemed to be traces of tears on his face, but he had forced himself to calm down. Hearing this, he gently put down the book and looked up, asking in a hoarse voice, "Get up. How did that child, Chun Yu, die?" "He was killed with 1 strike. Kong Teichu used the law of fire to form a heavenly sword and cut through the 3 laws of 14th junior brother, Bei Feng Zhan De Qi, and killed him." Yen Hua did not get up. He kept kneeling on the ground, trembling slightly and lowering his head. Drops of tears fell on the badly worn beach floor. He was sad. How could he not be sad? Prince Chun Yu was his teacher and friend. Half of Prince Chun Yu's cultivation was taught by the teacher, and the other half was taught by Yen Hua. It was the crystallization of his efforts. Did Prince Chun Yu tell him about the rapid expansion of the 3rd star at the south gate? The headmaster was like a piece of withered wood. He sat there in silence for a long time. Only his slightly trembling sleeves betrayed his restlessness at the moment. "No," Yen Hua reported truthfully. 14th only talked to him about his bloodline and origin. He said that Kong Teichu was definitely not his match. Kong Teichu had the heart of an overlord who could conquer the sea of stars. He was unruly and arrogant, so he immediately retorted. Before they finished talking, the 2 of them started fighting, and it was 14th who attacked first. He was reckless. The teacher sighed, his expression sorrowful and regretful. He said bitterly, although Kong Teichu was a peasant who rose from a peripheral planet, he was also a formidable person. The reason I sent Chun Yu over was to negotiate peace with him. But unexpectedly, "Teacher, this man's Taoist heart is extremely tenacious and as stable as a rock. He's fierce and vicious. I'm afraid we can only kill him. There's no possibility of peace talks." Yen Huan's eyes flashed with murderous intent as he said coldly, "The ruins of immortality never wanted to occupy Earth. We just wanted to find a place to settle down in the solar system and establish a co-prosperity circle between the 2 galaxies. I didn't expect." The teacher smiled bitterly and shook his head. Jade Lotus Fairy shook her head and said, "Back then, the solar system was also destroyed. Didn't the Southgate Galaxy open its doors and let them in for refuge? A trace of anger appeared on her pretty face as she said in a cold voice, "That's right. Now, the Southgate Galaxy is in trouble and wants to seek refuge in the solar system, but Kong Taechu is obstructing us. We haven't reached Earth yet, but he's already here. He's unreasonable." The teacher nodded and said, "He must have seen the world and has a deep understanding of the survival of civilizations in the universe, but he's worried that we'll take over his home." There was a hint of thoughtfulness in his eyes and he found it strange. If Kong Taechu was really a native of an abandoned planet, how could he have reached such a high level of thinking? He might not have reached such a level based on the truth of the ancient history of the deity ground. In addition to that, his martial art and cultivation were too outstanding. He had killed the Golden Crow Guards, killed Prince Chunyu and even destroyed the Xianming Grotto Heaven. That was a small world, and he had fought in various planets and worlds, invincible. Such achievements were extremely rare even on the Southgate Galaxy, not to mention the worlds of the ruins of immortality. It was almost like a myth. For a moment, an uncontrollable thought came to his mind. Is he the reincarnation of a peerless grand cultivator from the depths of the star ocean? Or is he a grand cultivator from the depths of the star ocean who traveled to the solar system and made contact with the natives there and fought for them? But soon he denied the idea. He knew that grand cultivators from the depths of the star ocean could cover the entire Southgate Galaxy with their immortal will. In their eyes, the solar system and the Southgate Galaxy were just remote places that they wouldn't even look at. The heritage on Earth has been cut off. In the past, our two galaxies would have supported each other and helped each other improve. But Kong Taechu has caused a lot of bloodshed. I'm afraid we'll have to fight him this time. Yanhua's eyes were as cold as knives and a crazy viciousness was released from his body. He might have obtained some ancient heritage from the deity ground, but he's from a remote galaxy after all. Emperor Zhongli was missing back then and many ancient cultivators of the Ao Huang were defeated by the Emperor of the Ruins and my teacher. What can Kong Taechu do? He kowtowed again and said sincerely, "Teacher, please help me. Kill this guy for the safety of the ruins of immortality and avenge our 14th brother. If you do, Kong Taechu will definitely lose. I'm afraid I have no choice but to come out this time." The master stood up and immediately became like a magnificent mountain, giving people the feeling that they could only look up to him and couldn't move at all. Chapter 1509. Prince Spring Rain had been killed by Kong Taechu, and the Xianming Grotto Heaven had been destroyed by Kong Taechu. The 100 Moons Academy didn't hide the news and quickly reported it to the Ruins Emperor's palace. When the news spread, the entire Ruins of Immortality was shocked. In fact, Prince Chunyu had brought many prodigies from the God of War list down to the mortal world to negotiate peace with Jiang Taichu under the protection of Yanhua and Jiang Enai. In order to show off his achievements, he was determined to win. He had made a big fuss, and many Grotto Heaven's sect masters, nobles, ministers, and nobles sent him off. Everyone in the Ruins of Immortality knew about it. Now, Yanhua had returned alone, and Prince Spring Rain hadn't appeared. Moreover, the various Grotto Heavens and sects had arranged for cultivators to observe in Hylon, Northern Ocean, and other worlds. With the Soul Tablet monitoring, the news couldn't be hidden at all. Soon, the truth about Prince Spring Rain's death and the destruction of the Xianming Grotto Heaven spread. The Ruins of Immortality's Ruins Emperor's Palace, 100 Moons Academy, and Sky Palace, as well as countless cultivators and mortals in the 6 Grotto Heavens, the 8 vassal states, and the 36 provinces, were all shocked. Kong Taechu entered Northern Ocean and encountered Prince Spring Rain. Prince Spring Rain was killed by him with one slash. Kong Taechu swept through Northern Ocean, killed Yulinzi, destroyed Winterfell, and finally destroyed the Xianming Grotto Heaven. Kong Taechu swept through many sects and huge cities in Northern Ocean and became the master of Northern Ocean. He wants to establish a planet blockade front. Every piece of news was like a nuclear explosion, making everyone dizzy and trembling. The news was like a meteor hurricane in the starry sky. With the ruins of immortality as the center, it spread to Hylon, fertile lands, barbarian, desert, and other planets. Upon hearing the news, countless heavenly sects and clans were shaken. At that moment, Jiang Tian's name resounded throughout the ruins of immortality. A prince of the ruins emperor's bloodline has been killed. This is the first time in the history of the ruins of immortality. Kong Teichu has broken through the sky this time. The Academy, Ruins Emperor's Palace, and Sky Palace will definitely seek revenge. Not only is he a member of the royal family, but he is also the favorite disciple of the headmaster of the Academy. I heard that he has already reached the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, and it is the upper-grade nascent soul stage. In the next 300 years, he will become a half-step Huashan realm cultivator. In 500 years, he will become a Huashan realm cultivator. Yes, indeed. I saw Sky Palace send out 30 planetary-class space battleships. Each one of them could destroy a planet in the north. 30 ships moving out at the same time. Oh my God, will be killed by Kong Teichu 100 times over. The death of Prince Chunyu was a very important event. A state funeral was held. The whole city was covered in white mourning clothes, and mournful music shook the heavens. Countless people remembered and commemorated his passing. He was praised as a hero who fought for the ruins of immortality and died to liberate the life planets in the solar system. People saw it. In the past, the peaceful academy had become extremely noisy. Tens of thousands of disciples of the academy had all taken off their spring cotton clothes and changed into armor. They trained day and night on the training ground. Cold light shone on their iron armor. Sword chi soared into the sky, and endless shouts could be heard. Even the flowing clouds in the sky were broken, and the sky became clear. One cultivator after another stepped on their flying swords and flew over endlessly from all directions like rainbows piercing through the sun. They were densely packed and innumerable, like a great river that stretched across the sky. Even after 3 days, they still hadn't stopped. They were the disciples who had been training in the mortal world, or cultivating in seclusion in various secret realms, or slaying demons in forbidden lands or the lower realm. They were urgently recalled. Among them, there were even many old cultivators, old chancellors, and living fossils who had completed their cultivation in the academy 1,000 years ago. Now, many of them had become giants, headmasters of heavenly sects, and masters of aristocratic families of cultivation. The academy's area expanded tenfold in 3 days, occupying the entire mountain range like a military camp. People saw it. The sect masters, elders, and even the grand elders of the 6 grotto heavens were all at the soul formation level. They walked out of the grotto heavens that were surrounded by essence chi and rushed to the ruins of immortality with serious faces. Countless nascent soul cultivators and half-step soul formation cultivators in the ruins of immortality had been ordered to discuss matters in the Emperor's palace and wait for orders. People also saw it. Spaceships that were hundreds of meters long and even thousands of meters long were flying over from the depths of the starry sky, carrying all kinds of materials on refining weapons, formations, and pellets, precious herbs, strange metals, and meteorites from outer space. There were so many of them that they couldn't be counted. The Divine Craftsman Hall of the Ministry of Works and the Divine Medicine Hall of the Ministry of Revenue, which covered an area of a few hundred miles, were working day and night. Flames rose into the sky, glittering and colorful lights were emitted, illuminating half of the sky and making thunderous noises. Hundreds of thousands of grandmasters of equipment refinement, talisman formation, and pill refinement were sweating profusely as they worked day and night like ants. Medicinal pills that were vast like an ocean, complicated formation discs, flying swords, shields, and armors as small as flying swords, shields, and armors as large as warships and divine cannons were forged by them. The entire ruins of immortality has been mobilized. They're going to fight Kong Teichu to the death. Oh God! I've never seen something like this before. Even when the heavenly court, the human world and hell joined forces 1,000 years ago, they didn't make such a big fuss. The headmaster of the academy, the sword god and divine lord Xing, he think too highly of Kong Teichu. Nobody could remain calm. Such a big event and such a shocking scene hadn't happened in the ruins of immortality for a long time. When the entire ruins of immortality was shaken and everyone was panicking because of Jiang Tian was on the verge of a breakthrough while cultivating in seclusion at the Wind Cloud sect in the Beiming world. When Jiang Tian completely swallowed and refined the Xianming cold spring, Jiang Tian opened his eyes and rays of light flashed in them. It's done. This time, it only took 3 days to break through. Jiang Tian checked the sea-calming ice god's mark on the divine disk with his divine sense, and a hint of joy appeared on his usually calm face. Every time Jiang Tian condensed a true seal of laws in the divine disk, it looked simple, but it was actually equivalent to a clone. He went from the golden core realm to the nascent soul realm, controlled the laws, and achieved perfection and transcendence of his divine body. This kind of comprehensive evolution and improvement of his true essence, qi, blood, physical body and mind power would take 100 years or even hundreds of years for an ordinary cultivator, and that was under the premise that all cultivation resources were available. Therefore, even if the time acceleration effect of the time array disk was taken into account, his breakthrough at this time was extremely fast. The reason was that Jiang Tian's other divine bodies had reached the nascent soul realm, and the strength of the corresponding true seal of the array disk was a great help to his future cultivation and improvement. It was smooth sailing. For example, after the true seal was condensed with the law of Taotai, Jiang Tian's ability to swallow and absorb cultivation resources immediately increased by 10 or 100 times. As for the other laws, be it the gung metal, the true fire or even the thunder and lightning, they would actually help during the refining process. The Xianming cold spring is equivalent to a diluted version of the Dinghai pearl. It contains extremely strong space power and laws. It's already very difficult to refine it so quickly. Jiang Tian was very happy, but he soon restrained his energy and slowly walked out of the place where he was meditating with a solemn look on his face. He knew that the ruins of deity were extraordinary. Even though it was located at the edge of the Milky Way, it had given birth to 100 soul formation cultivators, which meant that there were a lot of talents there, even more than the star systems in the central galaxy. Considering the amount of spirit qi in the ruins of deity, it shouldn't be so prosperous. It doesn't make sense even if the spirit qi of other planets is extracted. There must be something going on here. However, Jiang Tian didn't want to find out the truth about the civilization of the ruins of deity. Anyway, since they had bad intentions toward Kang Teichu and Earth, they had to be killed. Jiang Tian also knew that Prince Chunyu was very important in the ruins of deity. He was even more important than Prince Qiuming, because he was involved in the royal family and the academy. Jiang Tian was sure that the crazy revenge of the ruins of deity would soon come. Then let's kill. Jiang Tian's eyes were cold and his face was as hard as iron. Chapter 1510. Senior, you're out. When Long Xingnan saw Jiang Tian exiting seclusion, she immediately went up to greet him respectfully. She found it strange that Jiang Tian's breakthrough did not have any fluctuations, as if it had never happened. In fact, it was not strange. When condensing the space law true seal, Jiang Tian could only absorb the power of the Xianming cold spring. Other spiritual qi was useless. Therefore, Jiang Tian did not absorb any. Master, are we going to Penglai world next? Long Xingnan asked. Yes. Let's find the pearl tree. Help me condense the wood elemental true seal. I'm getting closer and closer to the nascent soul stage. Jiang Tian smiled and felt a little smug. Then he asked, are Dragon Gate and Ingzhou still safe? Long Xingnan said, I've checked all the portals on the 3 planets. They're all closed. The enemy can't use the portals to teleport between the ruins of immortality and the Hylon world. They can only use interstellar ships to travel long distances. But this is not done in a day. Even the most advanced ship will take half a month. Okay. Jiang Tian nodded and said, release the news. I'll arrive at Penglai world soon. This, Long Xingnan hesitated. The battle between cultivators can easily destroy hundreds of miles of land. It's too destructive. Baiming, Dragon Gate, and Ingzhou are already my worlds. Since the Ruins Emperor's Palace is after me, I'll naturally set the battlefield outside. Soon, the preparations were completed. I'll set off for Penglai World. However, since you've followed me, I won't treat you badly. Here are 2 scrolls of cultivation techniques. Fellow Taoists, please take a look and cultivate. Jiang Tian casually passed down 2 scrolls of cultivation techniques. Jiang Tian had always used his divine sense to pass down cultivation techniques. He did not leave any jade slips or scrolls. Oh my God! This cultivation technique is flawless. It's compatible with the great Tao of heaven and earth. It's far superior to the cultivation techniques of the ruins of immortality. Is this the legendary technique of the 9 heavens immortal realm? We will never forget the kindness of Master Tai Chu. In the future, we will be loyal and defend the solar system. The cultivators of the Northern Sea realm were shocked and gasped in amazement. They kowtowed 3 times and 9 times to thank Jiang Tian for his great kindness. Although the cultivation arts that Jiang Tian taught weren't at the immortal emperor level or the divine level, they were at least real immortal arts that could be used on any planet, galaxy, or planet. As long as they cultivated for 3 to 5 years, they would be able to make up for the flaws and make their cultivation methods compatible with the environment of the South Gate Galaxy. They would be comparable to the cultivation methods of the ruins of immortality, or even surpass them. Cultivate well. I may soon launch an all-out attack on the ruins of immortality. At that time, you will still have to follow me to the battlefield. Jiang Tian encouraged. After doing all this, Jiang Tian immediately rushed to the Realm Cave level teleportation array, only bringing along Ghost Wolf and Long Shingen. Wu Shujian and Fairy Yao Yu had already rushed to Billow World, then Fertile Earth World to return to their sects and clans. They were very worried that the Ruins Emperor Palace would immediately attack their family clans and sections. After all, they had learned their lesson from the extermination of the Dragon Gate. Penglai World. It was smaller than Northern Sea World, but it was closer to Billow World, so it was full of vitality. The mountains were green and lush with vegetation. In the mountains and rivers, there were fierce beasts roaring like thunder. Spirit birds flitted through the dense spirit chi mist. In a remote mountain wilderness, a young man in black suddenly appeared out of thin air like a ghost. The young man was tall and dignified. He had a handsome face and a cold gaze. His shoulder-length black hair fluttered in the wind, giving him a sense of elegance. However, there was no treasure glow on his body. He didn't have a single Tao artifact, true artifact, or spirit artifact. The accessories he wore were all ordinary items, dim and mottled. He didn't have much of an aura to speak of. He looked very ordinary, like a blade of grass, a tree, a flower, or a stone. But behind him was a man with a ghastly pale countenance, a sinister and mysterious aura, and wore a black cloak. The cloak was actually woven from numerous crow feathers, and it was completely different from the crane feather clothes that cultivators often wore, causing it to give others a strange and ghastly feeling. As for the other maid-like woman, she was tall and slender with exquisite curves, but she wore very ordinary clothes. It was only when her eyes occasionally flashed with a bright light and revealed an extremely terrifying killing intent that she could be considered to be extraordinary. They were none other than Jiang Tian, Long Shengnan, and Ghost Wolf. Young master, are we going straight to the Heaven Baron sect to seek out Sword Sovereign Outyin and Zhang Qingyang? Long Shengnan asked softly. She was also shocked. Jiang Tian's concealment technique was too powerful. He looked like a Foundation establishment cultivator. Even though she knew Jiang Tian's background, she couldn't see any signs of it when she carefully probed. Don't panic. Jiang Tian gently fanned himself with a folding fan that he had found somewhere and said with a chuckle, "Isn't it good to take a walk among the people? The Northern Sea realm is covered in ice and snow for thousands of miles. You can't even see a single flower or grass. Let's take a walk first. As for the pearl tree with me around, who can take it away?" Jiang Tian had been cultivating for thousands of years, but he wanted to return to the basics. He didn't want to be an emotionless, stone-like weirdo. Under the blue sky was the human world, and in the human world, he was immortal. He also liked the human world, the green and lovely trees, and the vitality of the grass. Don't say any more. You'll disturb Senior, absolute beginning. He has been fighting all the way, fighting bloody battles in the universe. Wouldn't he be relaxing? Seeing that Long Xingnan was about to speak, Ghost Wolf hurriedly stopped her with his divine sense. Besides, Senior, absolute beginning, is wearing a white dragon robe. He's traveling incognito, so he can see the real situation here. Jiang Tian and the others flew unhurriedly. In less than an hour, a medium-sized city with a population of 1 million appeared in front of them. A dome-like light screen enveloped the outside of the city, emitting a gentle light. At this time, they could see many mortals and even some cultivators. Mortals rode on horses and sedans on the official road, while cultivators flew through the air on their swords, like supersonic fighter jets. When they passed by, the mortals, whether they were peddlers or rich gentlemen, all knelt on the ground with a respectful and fearful expression, saying, "Immortal Senior, I'm your disciple." As for the cultivators, they were usually arrogant to the extreme. They didn't even look at them, but they didn't make things difficult for them either. The cultivation world here was only at the same level as the Northern Sea realm and the Dragon Gate realm. Most of them were Qi refinement, and there weren't many foundation establishment cultivators. Golden Core cultivators were already giants. For example, the city lord of Maple City in front of them was a mid-stage Golden Core cultivator. Fellow Taoist, which famous mountain and cave residence are you from? Do you want to enter Maple City? Have you bought an entry jade card? While Jiang Tian and the other two were flying at a leisurely pace, a noble young master in white clothes flew over and took the initiative to strike a conversation with them. He was 80% foundation establishment cultivator, so he obviously had some foundation. "I'm Jiang Tian, an itinerant cultivator. May I know your name? Do you need a jade card to enter the city?" Jiang Tian stopped in his tracks and stood in the air as he asked in surprise. "You don't know?" The noble young man waved his folding fan and said mysteriously, "I heard that the great demon King Kong Techu is going to sweep this world. This great demon King Kong Techu is so scary. It was born with 3 heads and 6 arms. It bared its fangs and had a bloody mouth as big as a mountain. He loves to drink human blood and eat human flesh the most. Everywhere he goes, it's like a swarm of locusts from the universe. The land is barren and there are only bones left." Long Xingnan glanced at Jiang Tian with a strange expression. "Although my young master looks ordinary, he doesn't have to be like this. Has he become so terrifying and ugly in the eyes of others?" Chapter 1511. "So scary?" Long Xingnan asked. "Ha, why would I lie to you?" The noble young master said, "Kong Techu's vanguard has arrived. There are a few thousand of them, all foundation establishment cultivators. They are burning, killing, robbing, and committing all kinds of crimes." Jiang Tian was slightly taken aback. Someone was trying to smear his reputation. It seemed that there were many demons and monsters hiding in the Penglai world. So, the entire Penglai world is in a mess now. Ordinary people have abandoned their families and businesses and hid in the deep mountains and forests. Cultivators are too big of a target and there is no way to hide. So, they have all gathered in the big cities and sections. The noble young master was about 17 or 18 years old. He had red lips and white teeth. His face was as clear as jade, and his face was flushed red. He seemed to have drunk a lot of wine and was in a daze. He was very enthusiastic and explained as if they were close friends. Of course, it's easy for cultivators with roots in sects and families. But for itinerant cultivators, if they want to enter the city, they have to pay a lot of money to buy the jade token. Although Maple City is not a big city, it is at least a medium-sized one. There are several Golden Core cultivators guarding it, and there is a formation array that can resist nascent soul cultivators. There are also other formations to reinforce and cultivate. It can be said to be as safe as a rock. So, the price of the jade token is not low. One token costs at least 5,000 kilograms of low-grade crystals. After the noble young master finished speaking, he looked at Jiang Tian's expression. He hoped to see a panicked expression on Jiang Tian's face. But it was a pity. He only saw calmness on Jiang Tian's face. There was no emotion, as if the world was overturned and the stars were destroyed. Jiang Tian didn't care. In fact, Jiang Tian almost couldn't hold back his laughter at this moment. This kid really knows how to talk nonsense. The formation array of Maple City was far inferior to that of Winterfell and Black Crystal City, not to mention Winterfell. Its toughness could only resist ordinary golden core cultivators. As for nascent soul cultivators, it could destroy them with a finger. It was probably because he wanted to attract her attention that he deliberately exaggerated and boasted like this. Of course, it was also possible that he himself didn't know the details of this formation. Could it be that this kid is a peerless expert? Could it be that he still has the ability to protect himself in this world-ending disaster? The noble young master was suspicious. His divine sense swept over Jiang Tian and the other two. Helpless, the noble young master coughed twice and laughed dryly before continuing. Cough cough. Brother Jiang, to tell you the truth, I am Wang Hailing, the son of the first wife of Maple Leaf City's Wang clan. My other identity is the nephew of Maple City's city lord, Su Muja. The corners of his eyes and the tips of his brows continued to reveal a proud and complacent expression. I happen to have 5 jade tokens to enter the city. If you need it, I can give you a few. So it's young Master Wang. I've heard so much about you. Jiang Tian hurriedly revealed a respectful expression. He bowed and cupped his fists. However, this jade token is not cheap. Everyone needs it. Brother, I don't deserve a reward for nothing. I'm really embarrassed to take away someone's love. Hey! As the saying goes, it's fate that brings us together. In this chaotic world, we cultivators naturally have to help each other. Brother, you don't have to treat me like an outsider. Wang Hailing put on a righteous expression. Then he moved to Jiang Tian's side and elbowed Jiang Tian. A pair of shifty eyes swept over Long Xingnan's curvaceous and exquisite body. He smiled and said, Brother, this servant girl of yours is very charming and charming. Her manners are proper and elegant. She's been trained very well. I won't hide it from you. I just happen to be lacking a close friend. I wonder if young Master Jiang is willing to share this with me? Seeing that Jiang Tian didn't say anything, he patted his chest and proudly said, As long as you're willing to part with this treasure and help me out. In the future, I'll protect you in Maple City. I guarantee that no one will dare to provoke you. Even if that Kong Teichu personally comes, he won't be able to harm you in the slightest. Forget it. Jiang Tian felt that this kid was interesting and didn't want to kill him. He tactfully refused. This servant girl is also convenient for me and I like her. I can't part with her for the time being. Brother, don't blame me. Goodbye. As he spoke, he flew towards Maple City unhurriedly. Long Xingnan's face was as cold as frost. A cold light flashed across her eyes. This kid actually dared to covet her. He was simply courting death. However, she didn't kill him. After all, Jiang Tian didn't give the order. Humph. She only glanced at Wang Hailing with disdain and followed Jiang Tian. Ghost Wolf could only let out a strange laugh. Left? What's with your expressions? What a strange smile. Are you looking down on me, Wang Hailing? If I'm angry, I even dare to kill myself. Wang Hailing was extremely depressed and softly muttered a few words. Then he stood with his hands on his hips and gloated at Jiang Tian and the other two. He burped and said, Maple City is blocked by a formation and heavily guarded. You don't have a token. Let's see how you're going to pass. Do you want to force your way in? That's courting death. In the blink of an eye, he saw Jiang Tian and the other two arrive in the sky above the city. They were only 10 meters away from the formation. At this time, Jiang Tian's footsteps paused slightly. Just when Wang Hailing thought that Jiang Tian would not be able to pass and was about to laugh and mock him, he saw Long Xingnan take a light step forward. A pair of slender white hands stretched out. Like a servant girl opening a curtain for her master, she easily tore open the formation's light barrier. There wasn't even any mana vibration or backlash. A 10-meter-wide hole appeared in the formation's light barrier. Jiang Tian and Ghost Wolf walked in unhurriedly, as if they were taking a stroll in the park. On the city walls and in the sky, many of the city guards also looked in the direction of Jiang Tian and the others, but they didn't notice anything. Jiang Tian and the other two swaggered into the city as if they were entering a no-man's land. In the blink of an eye, they disappeared into the crowd. What did I see? Could it be that they are ghosts? Seeing this scene, Wang Hailing was so shocked that all the alcohol in his stomach turned into cold sweat. He was no longer drunk and was dumbfounded. After a while, he came back to his senses. He secretly mocked himself for drinking so much that he actually had hallucinations. After Jiang Tian and the other two entered the city, they landed in a remote alley. They dispersed their invisibility technique and scanned with their divine sense. They saw that there were pavilions and roofs everywhere. In the city, there was a long river that ran from north to south. There were boats and boats. Although it was evening, the river was brightly lit. Tourists were weaving together, reciting poems and composing. The pleasant sound of music could be heard from time to time. There was also the tender laughter of women, adding to the liveliness of this place. In the east of the city, there was a luxurious and huge mansion. Bursts of laughter and music could be heard. However, there were hundreds of foundation establishment cultivators standing guard. That was the Su family of the city lord. Although it was very prosperous, most of them were still ordinary people. There were only tens of thousands of cultivators and 7 or 8 gold core cultivators. Most of them were in the foundation establishment and chi refinement stage. Let's go and listen to music and drink. Jiang Tian pointed at the boats and boats in the long river, waving his folding fan and chuckling. Ah, my lord, where are we going? Long Shengnan was suddenly stunned. Her heroic and elegant eyebrows frowned. On that crystal-clear and beautiful face, there was a bit of reluctance, a bit of confusion, and a bit of fear. Jiang Tian did not say anything. He had already walked over calmly. Ghost Wolf explained from behind. Miss Shengnan, there are many strange people in the mortal world. There will be many cultivators there. My lord wants to inquire about information. If he wants to inquire about information, he can scan with his divine sense as clearly as looking at the lines on a palm. It is clearly. Long Shengnan did not say anything, but she pouted. Her heart was also sour. Qi Liqui, Ao Jiao, and even me, which one of them did not allow you to do whatever you want? Yet you are still attached to this mortal world. However, along the way, Long Shengnan felt a trace of abnormality. That place did not seem to be as simple as a brothel. One by one, cultivators who seemed to be ordinary people rushed towards the boats. Although they tried their best to conceal their cultivation, with Long Shengnan's powerful divine sense, she could naturally see it. They all had cultivation and it was not low. Among them, there were a few who had reached the gold core realm. They are concealing their cultivation. There should be some secret matter. Senior Tai Chu wants to investigate. Long Shengnan finally understood. Chapter 1512. At this time, the curtain of night had already fallen, and the pleasure boats were all hung with colorful lanterns. These lanterns were not ordinary lanterns, but were made with colorful gems and luminous pearls, giving off a colorful mist. Through the smoke, in the dark ripples, there were wisps of bright ripples. Most of the boats had 3 to 5 floors and were dozens of feet long. They could accommodate 100 people. The ridges of the houses were carved with beast heads and flowers. The window frames were also extremely exquisite. However, they were all inlaid with array patterns that could isolate sound and prevent spirit consciousness from probing. In addition, the river was shrouded in clouds and the boats were faintly discernible, adding to the sense of mystery. By the river, there were luxuriant trees and strange stones. There was an endless stream of people coming and going. The melodious sound of music came from the boats. However, it wasn't vulgar. It was like the heavenly music of the 9 heavens and the sound of the great Tao. It had a feeling of cleansing the mind, making those who heard it feel refreshed and peaceful. The Jade Lady sect has appeared. Bai Muxue is giving a lecture. Many disciples of the aristocratic families and the elites of the heavenly sects are here. I want to see her face. I heard that she's going to succeed the sect master of the Jade Lady sect in the future. This time, the disciples of the aristocratic families and the elites will definitely fight for her favor and show up. Sigh, I don't have the chance to enter. I heard that only Golden Core perfected lords or important people in the sects and cities have the chance to get an invitation. Many mortals and cultivators stopped by the river. There were thousands of them and they couldn't see the end of them. They discussed animatedly. Some of them had expressions of admiration, some of them sighed and some of them looked excited. The cultivators were conversing with their spirit consciousness. However, Jiang Tian and the other two had powerful spirit consciousnesses and could detect everything. To them, there weren't many secrets here. So, it's the Jade Lady sect. Long Xingnan revealed a strange expression. You know? Tell me. Jiang Tian smiled faintly. Long Xingnan was the saintess of the Dragon Gate of the Ocean Billow world. The Dragon Gate was one of the 7 heavenly sects of Ocean Billow world and was given the task of ruling the 4 lower worlds by the Ruins Emperor's palace. Long Xingnan often traveled to many worlds and knew a lot of secrets and information. The Jade Lady sect doesn't have a good reputation. Long Xingnan whispered. They are most adept in the Tao of dual cultivation. They run brothels and are tainted by the boundless secular world. But in reality, these are just outer sect businesses. A true inner sect disciple is not only beautiful, unparalleled, and charming, but also cherishes their appearance and is pure as ice. Most importantly, they are proficient in dual cultivation, using the Tao of Yin and Yang to complement each other to improve their cultivation. They are the first choice for many major cultivators when they choose to become Tao companions. I see. How strong is this sect? Jiang Tian chuckled. Although the Jade Lady sect doesn't have a nascent soul heavenly lord, it's still a force that can't be underestimated. Long Xingnan said respectfully, the disciples of the Jade Lady sect all come from humble backgrounds, like rootless duckweed. However, as long as one's bone structure and appearance weren't bad, they would be accepted into the sect. The atmosphere of the Jade Lady sect was extremely high. They were exceptionally united and loving. The sect master and elders treated these disciples like their own children. These disciples were extremely loyal to the sect. Even if they were married and left the sect, they would still return to the sect every year and sincerely pay their respects. Although these married disciples are ordinary, their husbands and Tao companions must be peerless masters or have extraordinary statuses. In the long run, the Jade Lady sect is like a dandelion spreading its seeds, spreading its disciples all over the world and taking root in the ruins of deity. The power they can mobilize is unimaginable. When my father was still alive, even if he offended a nascent soul heavenly lord or a real soul formation cultivator, he still warned us not to offend this sect. What an army of women! Although Jiang Tian had seen a lot of sects similar to the Jade Lady sect in his previous life, he couldn't help but sigh at this moment. Men conquer the world, women conquer and transform men. The Jade Lady sect controls a group of the most outstanding women in the world. Wouldn't they be able to control the world? The ancestral master of this sect found a different way and gathered such a large force. She is indeed an interesting person. Suddenly, a loud noise came from the shore. Many people were excited. Bai Muxue is out. Jiang Tian looked up. Amidst the jingling sounds of pendants, a white-clothed woman walked out from a jade pleasure boat. This woman's jade-like face was radiant, like a pearl emitting clouds. She was otherworldly and incomparably beautiful. Her divine elegance was contained, and her jade-like bones were born. Her appearance was almost perfect, without a single flaw to be found. Her snow-white clothes fluttered in the wind, making her look like an immortal, like the moon fairy who rode the wind and returned. At this moment, many people were shocked. They revealed looks of admiration, but they also felt ashamed of their own inferiority. Everyone knew that the disciples of the Jade Lady sect were the most proficient in the Tao of dual cultivation. However, at this moment, Bai Mushue's charm was peerless, and her appearance could topple cities. Yet, she did not look like a prostitute at all. She was like the gemstone lantern hanging in the corridor, bright yet cold and clear. She was magnificent yet pure and holy. This kind of contrast was truly breathtaking. This was a very strong psychological impact. Under the influence of their old friends, she should be like a pool of spring water, obedient, a peerless beauty. However, at this moment, Bai Mushue was as beautiful as ice and jade. She was pure but not seductive, and she was untainted by the mud. In addition, the Jade Lady sect is the largest intelligence agency in Hailan and even in the ruins of immortality. Long Shengnan said solemnly, "In the land of prostitution, fish and dragons are mixed together. Whether it's the peerless cultivators or the ministers of the mortal world, they all forget to go home. And in front of the woman they love, men always like to show off their connections and abilities. Especially when they are drunk, they will spit out a lot of secrets. The Jade Lady sect should be the sect with the most information in the ruins of immortality." "That's true," Ghost Wolf said softly. "The Jade Lady sect has a wide news tower, which is responsible for organizing a lot of information. I heard that there are 2 million books and billions of words piled up like a mountain. Bai Mushue is very clever. She even invented a kind of big case analysis technique. She can use a lot of historical clues to deduce the future development of events and solve many unsolved cases. It is said that the D Ting Guard, who is responsible for intelligence among the 9 guards, once threw out an olive branch and wanted to cooperate with the Jade Lady sect. However, it is unknown whether the other party will accept it or not." "Yes." Jiang Tian nodded. He was a little tempted. If he could take over the Jade Lady sect, the ruins of immortality would be as easy as looking at the lines on his palm. The treasure ship was gorgeous. It shone brightly and bloomed with auspicious colors. Bai Mushue stood at the bow of the ship. Her waterfall-like black hair danced in the wind and her clothes fluttered. She was otherworldly. She was like a fairy or a person from the Guanghan Jade Wall. She was so beautiful that it was suffocating. At this time, even if there were thousands of cultivators and mortals gathered around, there was no sound at all. Everyone was quietly admiring her beauty, as if they were afraid of offending the beauty. They stared at her without blinking, as if they were afraid that they would miss out on something. "Thank you for giving me the honor. I, Bai Mushue, am returning home to celebrate my father's 60th birthday. When I passed by the Maple City's Fallen Leaves River, I saw that there were refugees everywhere. They were homeless and had to sell their children. I felt pity for them. Therefore, the ship stopped at Maple City for 3 days. I will play the guqin and donate all the money I earn to the relief of the victims." Bai Mushue's red lips parted slightly with a smile. Her delicate voice was like the blooming of flowers and the tinkling of spring water. It made people feel that they did not need to listen to the guqin. As long as they heard her voice, they would forget everything and be satisfied. After she finished speaking, she lowered her head slightly and curtsied. Her movements were elegant and cultured. She went into the pleasure boat and a soft voice sounded. "I will play the guqin in the moonlight to thank you for your kindness." Suddenly, the graceful sound of the guqin came from the pleasure boat shrouded in fog. It was clear and pleasant to the ears. It was as if one's bones and meridians were being massaged. It was extremely comfortable. It was elegant and beautiful, moving people's souls. The disaster relief will be remembered forever. On behalf of the poor people in the world, Jade Lady Sect thanks everyone. One by one, the pleasure boats broke through the clear waves and sailed to the shore. On top of the boats, there were maidservants who were speaking softly. "Quick, quick, quick. The more you send, the more you send, the more you send. Maybe you can get this woman's permission to enter the pleasure boat." The rich young masters on the shore were like fans on earth who met their idol. They were immediately excited and urged their servants to bring over piles and boxes of crystal stones. Those maidservants who were ordering them around obviously had extraordinary cultivation. At the very least, They were far superior to ordinary people. With a wave of their long sleeves, they used their true origin shifting technique and sent the crystal stones into the pleasure boat. In the blink of an eye, the crystal stones were piled up like a mountain. The 4 strings were like the splitting of silk, and the song ended. The world was empty. The boats on the east and the west were silent. The only thing that could be seen was the autumn moon in the middle of the river. Bai Mushue's gentle voice drifted out from the jade boat. Today, everyone has donated. I will spend every cent on those refugees. I will make a list of the specific people and announce the list in the brothels of Jade Lady Sect. Please supervise. Chapter 1513. A burst of applause came from the shore. That's 100 times better than the Black Stone Gang. Yes. I heard that they made a fortune while Kong Teichu was disrupting the world and intercepted disaster relief materials. I'd rather throw my crystals in the water than donate them to them. The Black Stone Gang is as black as ink. They're as smelly and hard as stones in a latrine pit. You can't even scold them. Many cultivators and mortals were complaining crazily. What exactly is the Black Stone Gang? Jiang Tian asked. Long Shengnan shook her head and said softly, I've never heard of it. Brother, you haven't even heard of the notorious Black Stone Gang? On the side, a chubby young master who was called Fatty Yen by the other young masters looked at Jiang Tian and took the initiative to speak. It turned out that Jiang Tian's possible attack on Penglai had caused a huge uproar. Many civilians were terrified. They heard that he was as powerful as an ancient demon. With one attack, he could kill all living things within 100 miles. So, they had to build shelters or wear defensive Dharma artifacts. The Black Stone Gang was a disaster relief organization formed by the major cities and sects in Penglai. The major sects jointly agreed that all disaster relief materials and donations must be handed over to the Black Stone Gang. Otherwise, they would be killed without mercy. However, the Black Stone Gang kept a large amount of materials or distributed them to the major cities and noble families. As for the civilians, they couldn't get the shelters and defensive Dharma artifacts they built at all. For a time, there were complaints and the people had no way to make a living. Jiang Tian chuckled and said indifferently, the Jade Lady Sect is really something. Their plan is not small. Their actions have won the hearts of the people. Maybe they're just kind. Although Long Xingnan was evil, she wasn't as evil as Jiang Tian. At this moment, Bai Mushue smiled again and said, Everyone, we are facing a great enemy. Disaster relief is not a trivial matter. With just my strength alone, it is too weak to turn the tide and protect the people of the world. Cultivators above the Golden Core Heavenly Lord level, or important people of the sects and cities, please board the ship and discuss this matter together. Sigh, we won't have the chance. I want to cultivate. Fatty Yen showed a deep look of envy. Then he stomped his feet and beat his chest in regret. He had just donated at least 150 kilograms of crystals, but he was only from a wealthy family in the mortal world and did not have any cultivation base. Therefore, he was not qualified to enter the flower boat and see the beauty up close. Forget it, big brother. You visited all the major sects, but you didn't even pass a single test. You don't even have a bone structure. Don't hold on to such unrealistic fantasies. I did spend 300 kilograms of crystals. What a pity. Beside him was a beautiful girl in red. She should be this fatty's little sister. She bluntly ridiculed him, causing this fatty to want to cry but have no tears. What's so unfortunate about that? It was donated to the poor. Moreover, when the nest is overturned, no egg can remain intact. If that great demon Kong Teichu personally comes, we will all be reduced to ashes. None of us will be able to escape. What was the use of keeping the crystals? To make a coffin? The fatty had a simple sense of justice as he said casually, Brother, you're also a mortal? This fatty saw that Jiang Tian did not have any magical artifacts on him. He immediately gave him 3 protective magical artifacts and said, Looks like you haven't bought any magical artifacts yet. My name is Yen Juanza. Just call me Fatty Yen. Alright, I'll give you a few. Jiang Tian took them and cupped his hands in thanks. Fatty Yen held a wine jug and was drunk. He immediately poured out his grievances to Jiang Tian. You don't know. Once that demon Kong Teichu caused trouble, everything changed. Like me, I have thousands of acres of fertile land and countless houses. In the past, those girls were all willing to follow me. But now, only cultivators are the most popular, even if they are in the qi refinement stage. Now they are all in high demand. He pointed at a cultivator at the third level of the qi refinement stage not far away. He took a mouthful of hard liquor and said bitterly, "That guy used to be my family's guard. In order to earn crystals, he obeyed my orders. Now that my fiancée is with him, he broke the engagement with me." Jiang Tian took a look and saw that there were at least 5 or 6 young and beautiful girls around the qi refinement cultivator. They were talking loudly. The girls beside them looked at him with admiration and nodded. Brother Yen is really miserable. Jiang Tian expressed his sympathy. That's right. Fatty Yen slapped his thigh and looked angry. In the past, it wasn't like this at all. We rich young masters of the secular world were so glorious. Beauties and socialites all rushed into our arms. Now they are all aiming for cultivators. If you're not a cultivator, the rich and beautiful girls won't bother with you. After all, crystals are useless in the face of a life and death threat. It's all Kong Teichu's fault. If he dares to come, I'll blow his eyes out. At this moment, the beautiful girl next to Fatty Yen wrinkled her nose and mocked. If Kong Teichu came, he could smash you into pieces with a sneeze. At this moment, many cultivators started to rise from the ground and board the ship. I'm Han Tianyang, the Zongzi of the Heavenly Wolf sect. Greetings, fairy. I'm willing to work together with you to save the people. One of them was a cultivator of the Great Circle of Foundation Establishment. He looked to be about 20 years of age, but his features were wild and wild. He wore a coat made of animal hide, revealing a muscular bronze chest. His temperament was sinister, and his eyes shone with a savage light. He rose from the ground and flew toward the treasure ship. I'm Wu Fengqing, an itinerant cultivator. I'm willing to help you, fairy. A golden core perfected cultivator with an ethereal aura and extraordinary temperament streaked across the sky from afar. He broke through the gentle clouds and entered the ship. I'm Ling Yuxiu, the palace lord of the mythical palace. I admire your elegance and came specially to meet you. A ship flew across the sky. It was shining brightly and rippled with dermic power. It slowly sailed over and floated above the ship. A tall and handsome man with an unusually handsome face appeared. With a flicker, he entered Bai Mushue's ship like a ghost. For a time, many important figures, numbering in the hundreds, boarded the ship. Let's go, brother. It's already a great fortune to be able to see Fairy Mushua. There's no chance of getting on the ship. I know many places that are safe, have good wine and beautiful women. Although we're prostitutes, we can still relieve our worries. Fatty Yen invited Jiang Tian enthusiastically. He planned to throw away a lot of money, like a carnival banishment at the end of the world. Jiang Tian wanted to shake his head and refuse. He came here to gather some information, not to wander around the brothels. Right at this moment, a round-faced maidservant walked out from Bai Mushue's flower boat and said softly, "Today, Fairy wants to discuss with all of you the matter of saving the poor people. She needs the support of all of you, but she also needs the help of all the righteous people in the mortal world. Now, those who can donate 500 kilograms of crystals can enter the ship to discuss with Fairy Mushua." Fatty Yen, who was about to turn around and go to the brothel to pick up girls, immediately stopped and took out a few crystal bills. His fat hand held the bills and waved them in the air. He said loudly, "Fairy, fairy, here, donate 3,000 kilograms. The 3 of us will go." He raised his hand and pointed at Jiang Tian and his sister. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.